the wires made a tattletale sound, and the wave broke over the railing. And every man knew, as the captain did too, 'twas the witch of November come stealing. The dawn came late and the breakfast had to wait, when the gales of November came slashing. When afternoon came, it was freezing rain in the face of a hurricane west wind. When supper time came, the old cook came on deck saying, "Fellas, it's too rough to feed you." At 7 p.m. a main hatchway caved in. He said, "Fellas, it's been good to know you." The captain wired in, he had water coming in, and the good ship and crew was in peril. And later that night, when his lights went out of sight, came the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald.
I know I had to cut that a little short. In other words, start it partway through. I wanted to go full on 3 minutes to get us to that point of the song, because it's a beautiful story being told, and that's what we do on talk radio, right? We tell stories every day, but I would have felt too guilty. I don't want to take money away from the company. My job here is to talk to you. Phone lines open the minute we begin the show each and every day. This is the most interactive show in Waterloo Region. So happy that you're a part of it. Thank you very much for being here on this Monday morning. And the portion of the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald that we play this morning is in honor of today being the 50th anniversary of that great ship going down. It was on November the 10th, 1975, that the Edmund Fitzgerald sunk in Lake Superior. One of about 6,000 plus ships that have gone down in the Great Lakes over the years. And less than a year later, the great Gordon Lightfoot would record that song. He read the story in Newsweek magazine, and he just didn't feel like the story or the article that he read told enough of the story. So, being the artist that he was, he turned it into the story that became the 6+ minute song, The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. I don't know that Gordon Lightfoot at the time had any inkling that this would be a major hit for him, but it would reach number 1 here in Canada, number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100 in the United States. And as I said, less than a year after the ship went down, Gordon Lightfoot had that song, and it would go to number 1 here in Canada. So there you have it, from the article in Newsweek into your ears 50 years ago today. The wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, immortalized in song by Gordon Lightfoot. And if you know the song, and I'm sure you do, because it was a number 1 here in Canada, and we loved our Gord, didn't we? Gordon Lightfoot, Gord's Gold. He talks at the end about the church where the bell rings 29 times for each man aboard the Edmund Fitzgerald that died when it went down. When Gordon Lightfoot died, they rang that bell 30 times, the 30th time, of course, for Gord himself. Dan is on the phone with us this early Monday morning. Good morning, Dan.
Good morning, Mike. How are you?
Excellent, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thanks.
Good.
I just wanted to touch on the Blue Jays. I know it's ancient history now, but I just wanted to have my say. I think they did really well, and they really, showed some great team spirit, I guess, for lack of a better term. But I just think Bo Bichette, Santander, and Springer, to a lesser degree, I don't think they should have been in the series. I think in pinch hit situations, maybe, but I I think they handled it as best they could after they made the decision to start them. But I think some of the young guys might have, thought, why aren't I in there? I'm healthy, and I did just as good a job for half the season, 3/4 of the season. I don't know. What do you think, Mike?
Well, listen, Dan, I appreciate the call, and I can certainly understand that the feeling is still with us. It really kind of struck me on the weekend when my beloved reminded me it had only been a week. It feels like forever ago already. So invested were we in that Blue Jays team for about a month that the end of it just seemed very sudden. In fact, it was a completely anticlimactic ending to it all as the Dodgers turned the double play to win it. Kirk's bat breaks, yada, yada, yada. I don't know that I'm at a point where I'm questioning any of the choices made by manager John Schneider, to be honest with you, simply because this team seemed to be so tight that everybody was pulling for everybody else, and whatever the manager decided was best for the team in that particular moment, they just went with. So, I mean, Santander hardly played at all. I think we have to be optimistic looking forward that Santander plays a more prominent role in the years ahead. But nonetheless, I'm no baseball expert. I just know that I absolutely loved that Blue Jays run, and I won't be forgetting it for a long time. And I can tell you that the Toronto Maple Leafs probably wish the Blue Jays were still playing, because then we would be distracted from the woes that are the Toronto Maple Leafs. Or maybe we would stop saying, boy, if only the Maple Leafs could be more like the Blue Jays. Where's the heart? Where's the soul? I even saw an editorial cartoon to that effect last week. The Leafs lost again last night. Back-to-back weekend losses on Saturday to Boston and yesterday to Carolina, even though we had the lead in the game 4-2. But the Hurricanes stormed back in the third period to beat Toronto 5-4. But you know what? As a guy who knows that Austin Matthews, initials AM, is one of the best players in the world today, I take comfort this morning that we can celebrate with a little AM on AM in the AM.
Matthews has it centered in front. Nice. Gives it back to the point. McCabe down low, and they score! Matthews on the side, and the Leafs have a 2-goal lead.
There you have it. Austin Matthews that gave the Leafs that 4-2 lead. And what happened from there? Well, not a lot of good things, as I already alluded to. But we'll take the good when it comes. And Austin Matthews, AM on AM in the AM to start this Monday morning. We have much to discuss, not the least of which is this ridiculous record-setting November snowfall. That's a record I never wanted to be a part of. But here's the good news. Maybe you live in a neighborhood like I do, where this is the week that the city will come by and clean up all of those leaves at the curbside, right? Perfect, because now they're covered in thick, wet snow. By the way, I was walking home from the rink, and I was looking at the trees in my neighborhood, many of which still have all of their leaves intact. But somehow, magically, they're going to fall from the trees to the ground, and we're going to rake them to the curb so that the big heavy machinery can come by and scoop them up this week. Sure, that's what's going to happen. If I haven't mentioned it before, I'm going to mention it again right now. The most ridiculous service we offer anywhere in this region. We are wasting money, and we need to stop doing this. We need to stop doing this. And until we do, I'll just keep complaining and kvetching about it.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
We'll give you 5 for your Monday morning, the 10th of November, your Farwell Show 5, and beginning with Canada's finance minister, who's in Alberta today to pitch the federal budget. François-Philippe Champagne expected to attend the Calgary Chamber of Commerce. Last week, the minority government survived 2 confidence votes on the budget. Number 2, 2 pitchers with the Cleveland Guardians have been indicted on charges they took bribes to give sports bettors advance notice of their pitches and intentionally tossed balls instead of strikes to ensure successful bets. Emmanuel Clase and Luis Ortiz have been on non-disciplinary paid leave since July when Major League Baseball investigated what it called unusually high in-game betting activity when they pitched. Ortiz was arrested Sunday by FBI agents in Boston and is to appear in federal court today. Number 3, on your Farwell Show 5 this morning, the chairman of the BBC has apologized for what they describe as an error of judgment following accusations of bias. Britain's public broadcaster has been criticized for editing a speech American President Donald Trump made on January 6th of 2021 before protesters attacked the U.S. Capitol in Washington, D.C. BBC Director General Tim Davie and News Chief Deborah Turnus have resigned over the backlash, decisions that Trump has welcomed. Number 4 on your Farwell Show 5 this morning, heartbreak for the Golden Hawks. Wilfrid Laurier bidding for a 3rd straight Yates Cup title on Saturday. But after an undefeated season, the favored Golden Hawks fell 30-27 to Queens. That means Queens now advances to the Mitchell Bowl in Saskatchewan next weekend. And number 5, quite the highlight for some young hockey players in the Greater Ontario Hockey League. Hall of Famer Joe Thornton, who will be inducted tonight, returned to St. Thomas, where he once played for the St. Thomas Stars. And Thornton read the starting lineup.
Hey now, boys, huh? Hey. Boys are looking good. What do we got tonight? I guess I'm doing the starting lineup. Is that cool with you guys? All right, on left wing, Legalic. Yeah. Up the middle, Camo. Yeah. On the right wing, down there. Yeah. On left D, we got Moody. On right D, we got the Savage. Yeah. In a net, we got our buddy Macker. Let's go. Oh, boys, it's so good to be back here, though. Hey, I grew up right here. This means so much to me being back. But enjoy this. This is a big part of who I was growing up. Whew, I'm going to cry, but wherever, come here. I still got the jacket that I wore. Look at that.
You got to love it. Big Joe Thornton, Jumbo Joe we call him, and he's in tears reading the starting lineup for the St. Thomas Stars. Thornton goes into the Hockey Hall of Fame today along with Zdeno Chara, Duncan Keith, Alexander Mogilny, Jennifer Botterill, and Brianna Decker. And that is your Farwell Show 5 for this Monday morning. Back to the phones we go because Walter is with us early this morning, too. Hey, Walter.
Good morning. Yes, sirree. So, unfortunately, the Kingston area hammered the Kitchener area, Waterloo this weekend in football and hockey, I hear. So,
well, I wouldn't say, hang on. Hammered. It was a 3-point field goal victory for Queens over Wilfrid Laurier, and it was a 1-goal skin-of-your-teeth win for the Frontenacs over the Rangers. Settle down over there, Storm fan.
Hey, buddy, listen. Close only counts in horseshoes, okay?
I'm just saying you got to be accurate. Nobody hammered anybody. Maybe you were hammered when you were watching the games.
I don't even drink, Mike. I'm like you. I only drink on special occasions.
All right.
Well, coming up.
Special occasions are days that end in Y. What else you got for me this morning, Walter?
Well, I just wanted to mention about that thing over there in England with Trump. Like, this guy's reach is just starting to go, like beyond ridiculous, like, even his own party now is turning on him. And
what do you mean this thing over in England, Walter? What do you mean this thing over in England? What are you referring to? The BBC?
Well, weren't you talking about the reporters over in England?
Yeah, but listen, you can talk about Trump's reach all you want. That's terrible on the part of the BBC. That just paints us. I feel awful because of it. They did alter his speech. There was bias at work. The BBC darn well deserved to apologize for that. It was terrible.
Oh, yeah. If you don't want to hurt, Trump's feelings.
It's not hurting his... Walter, no. This is accuracy in reporting. This is keeping bias out of it. The BBC was way wrong here. Way wrong.
Okay. If you say so.
I say so.
You're in that business, and you're always 100% accurate. I have to give you that. So, yeah, like it's really starting to affect people around here, and something's got to give, man. Like, we can't keep going on like this with this guy.
Well, listen, again, I don't disagree that Donald Trump has been more than a little bit of a menace since returning to office, but we, at a time where we talk about trust in institutions being at an all-time low, we can't have things like this happening, which just reinforces the reasons we don't trust institutions anymore, right? This does next to nothing for mainstream media and the general perceptions of it today. So I appreciate what you said about what you hear from me on this show, because while I may offer an opinion you disagree with, we're bringing you the straight goods every day. But when an institution like the BBC fails us like that, oh my goodness gracious, that is a problem, and a very big one indeed. I think we'll get a guest on the show to talk about it at some point this week. Right now, I'm going to take a quick break. When I come back, I will share with you some really interesting conversation from Woolwich Township Council last week, talking about the budget. We've brought this up before, a potential 22% increase so that the township can write its financial books. And they are a mess for myriad reasons. But some of the language that we heard in that council meeting last week, very concerning. I'll share it with you coming up on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. So here's something that we know in Woolwich Township. Tax increases over the past 3 years have been greater than 8%, and then 10%. That's a lot, okay, over 3 years. And then this year, we received word that because of the state of the township's finances, the potential increase could be 22% this year, or pardon me, next for 2026, and then 18% in each of the next 2 years, just so that the township can write its financial books. It's a big number. That's not the number council will likely land on, but it's the big number that comes forward in an effort to fix what is a very messy financial situation in the township. It sounds like historically the township has not increased taxes enough to meet infrastructure needs and other needs in the community. Those taxes were kept arbitrarily low. Does it sound anything like Wilmot Township and the 51% increase they were talking about a year ago? Here's a little bit of what transpired when Woolwich Township Council was talking about its budget at the meeting last Tuesday. And one of the residents who attended the meeting was quite frustrated by what he was hearing.
You're all talking, can we pass back to staff? Can we guide? Do we have to make the decisions? And I think, quite frankly, to use a somewhat crass analogy, it's time to put your big girl and big boy pants on and make some of those decisions. There's not a corporation that goes through a budget planning process where they say, well, just tell me how much you'd like this year. There's always a CFO or somebody in charge who says, this year's budget plan is going to be 2.3%. Stick to it. And if the department head or the VP or exec in charge of that group comes and says, thanks, you told me 2.3 and here's 13%, they're going to be relieved of their duties because they were told 2.3%. At 22%, and if you say they came with, we didn't give direction, well, shame on council for not giving direction, and shame on the staff who came to think that a 22% plus tax increase budget in today's economy, or any economy, is even responsible. It's ridiculous.
Thank you, and I would just correct your presumption that staff came and expected a 22% budget. I asked them to tell us what it would take to get the organization in a good place. That is what they did, and that is what they brought us. They didn't bring us a 22% budget. They said, if you want to fix the fiscal trajectory that you are on, So the 22% was to get us on a good fiscal footing. The 13% that they brought today is for us to discuss and to say, where do we want to reduce our services, essentially, and for council to have that discussion.
That, of course, is Woolwich Township Mayor Sandy Shantz, and that discussion led to this reminder from CAO David Brenneman.
We are also in the position we're in now because we actually had increases that weren't keeping pace back in 2000, I think it was 2010 or 11, the roads and bridges inventory said at that time when we implemented a 1.5 infrastructure levy that we needed 4.4% per year just for roads and bridges. But now this council has received a report, just like other municipalities, that we have an 8.4% asset management overall gap that we need to address. Yes, I understand if we look on the microscope for the last 3 years, the increases have been significant. But if you look at the last 10, 15 years, you have to take that in the historical context as well. And that's part of the historical reason why we're in the situation we're at. Sometimes, like I said, there was 1 year you can look at there, we were told 0% in operating, 1.5 infrastructure levy. That in itself would have set us back in terms of some of our catch-up work on the infrastructure side.
You needed 4.4% on the infrastructure side. You put 1.5% towards it. You're falling behind. Now the infrastructure gap is more than 8%. But what does this sound like on the ground for residents of the township? The numbers shared by Councillor Bonnie Bryant really caught my attention.
They are the taxpayers. They are the boss. And they are telling us they have had enough. They want to see the rates reduced. And I think we need to listen to what the public is telling us. They control the monies that are coming into this township. And I've heard from many people in Breslau that are frustrated and fed up. They're looking at taxes in a residential subdivision and they're paying $9,000 on an average subdivision home. Like, that is horrendous. And you really have to question, why are these tax rates getting so high for a residential subdivision? They're like 30, 40-foot lots. They're not giant homes. And some of these people are on the verge of tears when you talk to them because they don't know what to do. They're talking about having to sell their homes to survive, and that scares me.
$9,000 in property tax? And I thought mine were high in Kitchener. They're not that high. But here's the piece that should send a shiver down your spine, as brought forward by Woolwich Township Councillor Nathan Cadeau.
There could be potentially a fourth option there, and that's that the township just files for insolvency. I think that we're at the point where the lowest tax rate, we have the lowest reserves. At what point do we just have to file insolvency if we can't afford to raise the money? And I mean, I'm serious about that. This scares me.
Somebody check on Woolwich Township. Are they out of money? Anybody got any money over there? This is frightening stuff. We already had a small township up in northern Ontario declare insolvency. We're broke. We got no money to pay anybody. And that was the end of that. These are really interesting times. And when we see this happening in Woolwich, I already referenced Wilmot and their 51% increase they were talking about a year ago, bringing it down to 20 plus, but that's still not much comfort for residents there. Now, Wilmot Township is using a consultant to balance the books or to prepare its budget. What happened to township staff? What are they being paid to do? If you wanted a case for amalgamation and having one local government to manage all of these things where smaller municipalities clearly can't manage their own books, this is a case for amalgamation. But we best be careful to make sure that Woolwich Township isn't out of money yet today. We'll continue to follow the story. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. I have no doubt that you heard over the last week or so that there are changes coming to curbside collection in this region. And I don't mean loose leaf curbside collection. I mean the blue boxes, the green bins, even the garbage bags and or cans that we leave at the curb. Everything's a changing next March. And I want to take a closer look this morning at those changes to our recycling because they prompted conversation in the Farwell household this weekend. We're joined by Matt Rodriguez, who is a regional councillor representing Kitchener, to talk about these changes. And, you know, Matt, it occurs to me that this is the region where the blue box was pioneered. Like, we invented the ding-dang thing here in this region. So why on earth would we make any changes to that system that's served us so well?
Mike, you took the words out of my mouth. I think Waterloo Region's been a pioneer in the blue box for many decades now. And so the changes to the blue box program have been in place for since about March 2024 and is in response to new provincial legislation that says if you're producing recyclable materials here in the province, so if you're creating, drink bottles or paper or packaging, those producers should be responsible for the costs of recycling that material. And so over the past several years, the province has changed the legislation. And back in March, this new company called Circular Materials, a not-for-profit, took over the region's existing recycling contract, which was set to expire coming up in the next few months. And in that time, they've procured their own contract. And so starting next year, that new contract will come up or will come online in response to those changes.
So what does it mean for us as residents in this region now when it comes to putting that blue box to the curb every week, or I guess every other week, with these changes?
Yeah, and so Circular Materials is working actually across the country, but especially across the province. So every community in Ontario will see some type of change in response to the change in legislation. So we learned over the last week or two, sort of in real time with the community, that's starting next March, so timed with the rollout of our new garbage carts and green bin carts, that recycling is going to be switching to a bi-weekly collection that sort of cycles weeks. So 1 week would be garbage and green bin, the next would be blue box.
Okay, 1 week garbage, green bin, the next week blue box. And then in terms of what we're putting into that blue box, I've heard of some changes to that as well.
Yeah, so it's actually really interesting. So through this change, there'll be a few new things that people can throw in the blue box. I learned recently that we'll be able to add deodorant stick packaging and empty toothpaste tubes. No clue that those were even recyclable at all, so that's really cool. So there are some good changes like that, but I think there's definitely some concerns of switching to biweekly. If we're switching to a biweekly cycle, there's a real risk, and I'm really concerned that people are going to be putting recyclable materials in the garbage to get rid of it on the off weeks, and then that becomes a regional responsibility, right? So, if it's in the blue bin, it's not the region's responsibility. It's not on our landfill's responsibility to manage. But as soon as it ends up in the garbage, it becomes part of our landfill. And I think we need to make sure we're doing everything we can to extend the life of our landfill and continue to recycle as much as we can out of that stream.
We were just having this conversation at our house on the weekend, Matt, when it comes to the bi-weekly collection of recyclables, because we have two blue bins at home. One gets filled with containers, the other with paper products, etc. And in all honesty, when they go out to the curb every week, they're pretty darn full. So if we're doing it bi-weekly now, will there be additional containers provided to households?
Yeah, it's a great question, Mike. So Circular Materials has committed to starting in the new year to deliver two additional new blue bin containers to households. I think that's a great step, but I continue to have concerns with the number of containers that people will be able to store. Some people I'm sure have no trouble with space, but there's a lot of houses, a lot of homes that don't have a ton of space, and I think we're gonna see some creative solutions that don't involve more recycling. So I think we, certainly some of us on council are, continuing to inquire with Circular Materials with our staff on how we can understand the impacts of this change on our landfill. Because as I said, as soon as it hits the garbage bin, it becomes our responsibility again. Whereas when we manage the whole system, we could, help put effort into diverting recyclables out of the waste stream and through education or incentives. But it was sort of the whole system that the region held. But now we kind of have one portion of it.
We had that. It was part of the conversation, that same conversation where we have a small room in the basement where the blue bins are now. And we thought, boy, if we had 2 more blue bins into there, that's the end of that room. But at the same time, lucky we have that room because, as you said, not everybody will. So I can certainly see that challenge. And one of the other things that strikes me here, Matt, and it kind of goes back to how we started this, talking about, this region pioneering the blue box all those decades ago. And now, as you say, it's going to be up to the region to manage what's going into our landfill. And if recycling doesn't happen perfectly and more things end up there, that falls on the region. But the extension of that is circular materials is now responsible for that blue box collection. Does it strike you as odd in any way that Waterloo region, where the blue box was pioneered, is no longer responsible for this collection?
Yeah, and I think, as I mentioned earlier, the Circular Materials is doing this now across the whole province. And so each community has a different program. The good news is that the list of materials that you can recycle across the province is now the same. So whether you're in Kitchener or Toronto, that list of materials or accepted recyclable materials will be the same. So those are some of those good changes, and I think the idea of producers having to pay is a good thing. But I think there are a few mechanics in how this is being rolled out in the region that I'm, really concerned about. And same with Green Bin. We were one of the early, we were an early adopter of the whole program, and we really got our Green Bin rates up pretty quickly compared to a lot of other communities. And so, it shows well for our community that we care about, our environment. We care about not needing to build a whole new landfill. We care about reducing our waste. And so I think it's going to be incumbent on us, despite these changes, to try and find ways to continue that effort.
I think putting the onus on producers when it comes to these recyclable materials is a good thing, because I really think that's an opportunity for us to cut down on the amount of plastics used, just as one example here. Was that the main motivation for the change, Matt, or is this a cost saving for the region? I mean, what was the impetus here?
Yeah, as you said, I think it's a great change for producers, right? It incentivizes, ideally over the long term, for them to find different types of packaging for their products that might not need to be recycled or could be compostable, for example, or doesn't need to be packaged. So I think those are some good sort of carrot incentives for the biggest producers to look critically at what they bring into the community, and so that I think that's great. And then in terms of the cost, the recycling program is no longer something the region does. We've as we've rolled out our new waste contract and all of the changes that are happening on that side next year, it's all been absorbed into that program to help balance out the costs for residents. So there is a cost savings overall, and hopefully, as you said, that there's some more incentive for producers to cut down.
So as we prepare for these changes region-wide next spring, Matt, what's the main message you would like residents to take away from this conversation as we get ready for this?
Well, I think it's going to be really important for residents to keep sharing their feedback, both with the regional council, regional staff, but also directly with Circular Materials and directly with their local members of provincial parliament. This is, as I said at the beginning, this is a decision that regional council made. Our staff and our team have been working so diligently and so hard to make this a smooth transition and a smooth rollout. As you can probably imagine, it's rather complex, and so I want to put a hat off to our staff for helping navigate all these changes. So I'd say continue to reach out to all those folks. Let us know how you feel about it, the changes, and we'll keep advocating to make sure that the transition and rollout are as seamless as possible.
Matt, really appreciate your time on the show today. Thank you very much for making time for us.
Thanks for having me on this morning, Mike.
Matt Rodriguez is a regional councillor who represents Kitchener, one of 4 Kitchener councillors on regional council, joins us to talk about the changes that are a-coming. We've talked a lot about those changes to garbage collection, whereby you're getting those new larger bins. We had to make our choice, right, back in September about which size bin we wanted to have, because starting next March, there will be an automated truck coming by with arms that come down and saves the operator of that truck the labor of lifting and twisting and all of those different things, reducing, obviously, stress on that person and automating the collection. So we went through that earlier this year. Now we're talking about the changes to recycling. And as I said in that conversation with Matt, we talked about it in the Farwell household this weekend. We've got those 2 blue bins. Quite frankly, we could probably already use a third. So great, we're getting 2 more, because the collection even of the blue bin now is only going to be every other week. Right now, it's garbage every 2 weeks and blue box and green bin every week. That's also going to be changing. So what does this look like on your end? First of all, hope you have room for all the bins. I mean, if I'm being honest with you, I'm not thrilled about the new garbage bins because I got no place to put that stuff. It's just going to be kind of hanging out at the end of my driveway, the back end, that, if you will. But it's not going to be the most aesthetically pleasing thing to have. And now I think we are lucky that we've got the space, if you will, in that small room in the basement for another couple of blue bins. But I don't know, not everybody does. I think about people with smaller places. I think about people in apartment buildings, et cetera, and what this looks like. And I think Matt's got a reasonable concern here that because of the biweekly collection, more things will end up in that garbage pickup instead of waiting for the next recycling pickup. Message from Randall to Mike at 570news.com. Guelph has been doing the biweekly pickup for years now. My girls have grown up to be 10 years old. Holding on to diapers in the green bin for 2 weeks didn't seem right. I hear you. Or the gray bin. I don't know if a gray bin was a thing that Guelph offered for those, but nonetheless, we are moving to that biweekly collection, and you're going to get more blue bins to store all the stuff. I think it's great that we can recycle more things. I think it's going to take some getting used to. How do you feel about the changes that are coming? The automated cart collection system for garbage, the biweekly recycling with the extra bins that are being delivered to your house. You can recycle toothpaste tubes. You can recycle deodorant sticks when the new system starts. But it does seem a little odd, doesn't it? In the place that pioneered the blue box, circular materials is now going to be taking over here in the region of Waterloo. We'll take your calls right after this. How do you feel about the changes that are coming? Are you ready for this? This is the Mike Farwell Show on 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
The garbage bin, it becomes our responsibility again. Whereas when we managed the whole system, we could help put effort into diverting recyclables out of the waste stream through education or incentives, but it was sort of the whole system that the region held. But now we kind of have one portion of it.
Matt Rodriguez is a regional councillor representing Kitchener, joins us to talk about the changes that are a-coming to our recycling program here in the region. Get ready for more blue bins to show up at the house so that you can manage with a bi-weekly collection and all of those other materials that can now be placed into the bins. 519-570-2545, star 570, and 1-800-570-5715. Would love to hear from you and your thoughts on the changes that are coming, how you'll prepare for them, if you're already prepared for them. Russell sends an email to Mike at 570news.com. We already put out just one kitchen garbage bag per month, and we only have to put out our recycling every 2 weeks. I must be doing something wrong, Russell, because our recycling and green bin is ready to go every single week. There's no question about that. Garbage, I think we would have gotten by with the smaller cart that's being offered. I went with the bigger one because I really had a hard time judging, like, how big is that little one anyway? So I'm probably going to end up with, in fact, I think I am ending up with a garbage cart that's bigger than what I need for what we throw out. But our recycling and our green bin is certainly raring to go every week. So that's going to be an adjustment for us, too. Let's go to the phones. Paul, good morning.
Good morning, Mike. Very interesting talk from Matt. Appreciate about the blue bin and all of that. I don't know about every 2 weeks, like you say. Okay, whatever. The one question we need to ask the region is, every year they keep telling us the life expectancy of the dump is X amount of years, right? The landfill. The problem I foresee is that the narrow-mindedness of our council and region and province, that what are you going to do when it literally is too full? And if you don't start planning for it now, it's going to be too late. I just looked something up on my phone from when I was a kid in the 80s going to Austria with the family. There's a plant in Vienna called the Spittelau Waste Incineration Plant, built in 71. Can you believe it? 71. They are incinerating garbage and producing energy for homes and businesses in that town. What? Are you kidding me? Like recycling garbage and reusing it? How does that work? Hello, Region of Waterloo. Did you look outside your little province to see what other methods are available? Here it is. It's on the internet. You can find it. Just do a search and come up with a plan for this region to make it efficient for everybody. Like, come on. I don't get it, Mike. How short-sighted can these people on council be that they don't investigate other options for us?
Listen, Paul, I appreciate that point. I really do. We talked not long ago on the show about the life expectancy of our landfill. When I started working in this business, we were always talking about a 30-year life expectancy remaining. We're now down to about 20, and they are doing some planning. And I asked about incineration, and it's kind of out there. At least there's a knowledge of it, but I don't think there's any plan as part of our longer-term strategy to build an incineration facility here. I know there's something going on down St. Mary's Way, a little west of here, a little southwest of here, when it comes to incineration. But I'm with you. To me, it seems to make sense, but I'm not sitting there trying to make the decisions or do the analysis of it. So interesting, though. I'm with you. It seems like a logical next step when we see it being used in other jurisdictions. Rob is on the phone with us this morning, too, but I don't think he wants to talk about recycling.
Yes, good morning.
Hi, Rob.
Oh, and hi, this is Rob Kuhn. How are you?
Kitchener Cooney, my favorite weather guy, who's not really in my good books right now.
I know. Sorry to change the story on you. I was prepared to wait to the end of this current discussion, which is very interesting. Anyways, but I just wanted to point out, there's a number of people have been asking me, have we had this much snow this early in the season before? And the answer is yes. It is uncommon, but it's happened before. And the earliest I've seen snow that's like 10 centimeters is October 24th, way back when, in like the 1923 or something like that. So that it has happened before, but it's not common.
Is that supposed to make me feel better?
It can make you feel better because this might make you feel even better. I think this will be all gone by maybe around about Thursday here, and I'm seeing on the weekend, Sunday, we may be seeing double digits. So I hope that makes you feel better and gets me out of this doghouse because it's cold in here.
It has been a little bit unwelcome, to say the very least, but isn't this kind of what your winter forecast was looking like? We were expecting some November snow and maybe into the new year, more of those freezing rain type events?
Yeah, this is typical, and it's early to mid-November. Snow should fall sometimes, and what I'm seeing in the charts going into the winter seems to suggest average to slightly above average temperatures and unsettled. So what that's done in recent years is we'll get some snow, some rain, some freezing rain. The exact amounts can't tell this far out, but I think it's going to be active and seesaw. And if we get sustained cold like we had last winter, personally, I'll be happy, at least if it's for a few weeks. But there's no sign of that at this point.
Cooney, thanks for the insight. I really appreciate your call.
You're very welcome, and go Rangers, go. We were there yesterday cheering them on. It was a decent game.
It certainly was. Great to hear from our good friend Kitchener Cooney, our favorite forecaster from Environment Canada. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Allow me, if I may, to take you back just a wee bit in the story of Ontario's Skills Development Fund. It's a $2.5 billion fund, don't you know? The intention of which is to develop skills for unemployed workers to get back into the workforce. Maybe there's retraining, whatever the case may be. That's the idea. It makes sense when you consider the name, right? The Skills Development Fund. Let's provide Ontarians with the skills they need. Let's develop those skills and get them back into the workforce in a meaningful way. It's lovely. It's $2.5 billion. That's a whole heck of a lot of money. And it has been the bane of the existence for our current Labour Minister, David Piccini, who has been accused of all manner of things, starting with attending the wedding in Paris of a government-friendly organization and or business that received money from this Skills Development Fund. That's where it started. Then you may recall last week, I couldn't resist because a sexy headline is a sexy headline. If you'll forgive the turn of phrase in this particular context, but it went from the minister attending the Parisian wedding of somebody who benefited from the Skills Development Fund to whether or not an adult entertainment establishment also benefited from the Skills Development Fund. This is what the leader of the third party, John Fraser, had to say.
So we all go back at the end of the week, and we're so glad to go home. I'm happy to go home. I miss my family. And then I talk about what's going on here. And I talk to friends and neighbors, my daughter, my wife, my sons. So I want to know from the Premier, how do I explain to them that the government gave $10.8 million to the owners of a strip club?
Now, that's $10.8 million with an M from the $2.5 billion with a B Skills Development Fund, but you had to kind of track the money down a little bit of a rabbit hole, and I don't think it was really connected to an adult entertainment establishment. It just turns out that, much like Kevin Bacon with 6 degrees of separation, the owner of this particular adult entertainment facility was several degrees removed from an organization that did receive $10.8 million from the Skills Development Fund. How do you feel about the story so far? The bottom line is that this massive fund has been under the microscope for quite some time. And here's the problem, especially if you are Premier Doug Ford, any member of his caucus, or any supporter of this provincial government. The story is not getting any better, because you consider an Auditor General's report into this and you find out that the wrong people were making the decisions as to who got the money in the first place. Oh boy. John Malloy is a former Liberal MPP and cabinet minister, probably had some experience dealing with funds just like this. John is currently the director of the Centre for Public Ethics at Martin Luther University College in Waterloo, and he joins us to talk about it. John, it strikes me that this Skills Development Fund is really, for the opposition right now anyway, the gift that keeps on giving, isn't it?
Oh, it's a scandal that seems to have no end. Every day there seems to be new revelations about how they've managed the fund, how they've tracked the fund, and the fact that a lot of the people that receive money from the fund have close ties to the Ford government, close ties to the minister, or they've hired lobbyists who have close ties to either the government, the minister, or both.
One of the things that really jumps out, and you have highlighted, John, is where the decisions are being made as to who gets granted money from this fund. And those decisions are coming from political staffers as opposed to ministry officials. What's the problem with that?
Yeah, I mean, I was shocked to read the Auditor General's report. And I mean, Auditor General's report, I say this with respect, are not the most exciting things to read. So if, a member of the public sort of looked through it, they might, before falling asleep. Government is supposed to work is that we have public servants who are there permanently. They have expertise in running programs. They have expertise in the goals that the programs are trying to put forward. You put out a call for proposals, for applications, that sort of thing. The bureaucrats look at it and they make the final recommendations of who should receive funding based on agreed upon criteria. It's a transparent process. And the other thing is it protects the politicians, because then if, a quote unquote friend of the government gets all sorts of money, they can say, look, there was a robust system. The bureaucrats looked at it and that was the recommendation. And to be very honest with you, as a former cabinet minister, when friends of the government don't get money, it's actually quite nice to be able to say, sorry, the bureaucrats really didn't like it. That doesn't mean that there's not back and forth between the political side and the bureaucrats, asking questions, making sure the criteria is developed properly, maybe asking them to take another look at something. But at the end of the day, you reach a consensus between them. That's how it's supposed to work. And what the Auditor General's report showed is that it was political staffers. It was conservative political staffers, the aides to the minister, who were making the decisions, which is outrageous. It lacks transparency. And guess what? It doesn't protect the minister. And whoa, he's discovered that, because he's got nothing to offer. He can't say, well, I was just acting on the advice of my officials.
Does this mean then when these decisions are left in the hands of staffers, are they more easily, I don't want to assume corruption here, but are they more easily swayed by government-friendly firms, et cetera?
Well, listen, your listeners may know before I was a cabinet minister, I was a political staffer, and, I like to think I did a good job. But at the end of the day, my role was to put a political lens to things, to support the minister, or in my case, I actually worked for the prime minister. It was a very different kind of role than having the expertise to go through detailed applications and say that they had met certain criteria. That requires expertise and experience. That's not the role of political staffers. Political staffers don't have that background. And political staffers, by definition, are supposed to look at things through a partisan lens. So wait a minute. You have people who are supposed to be adding a bit of a partisan touch to things, looking at applications coming in. It doesn't make any sense.
It strikes me, John, that we've heard this story before. It sounds awfully similar to the Greenbelt scandal that began this Ford government.
It's exactly like the Greenbelt scandal, where you had the minister's chief of staff who was directing public servants, imposing solutions or imposing direction on public servants. That's not the way it's supposed to work. And you know what? I'm not trying to say that, I spent my whole day Simon Pure just signing whatever the bureaucrats gave me. But, to go back to what I said earlier, you reach a consensus. I remember these types of programs, and they would come forward with their recommendations, and I would say, wait a minute, folks, there's not a single applicant from Northern Ontario or from Eastern Ontario or some high-profile applicants that come forward, and I'd say, where are they? What's going on? And there would be some back and forth, and sometimes the bureaucracy would say, look, their application was just bad, at which point you had to accept that fact. So, I'm not saying ministers just sit there all day long playing solitaire and waiting for their officials to come forward with the recommendations, but it's certainly not a case of a minister's office taking over a program like this. It just makes no sense. And you know what? The chickens have come home to roost.
They certainly have. And it leads me to wonder how we got here, John. In the decade or so since you were a minister of training, what has changed so that government is operating in this way?
Well, you know what? A lot of government is based on sort of, if I can use this term, unwritten rules, conventions, ways of doing things, guidelines that no one would ever step over. And in the last 10 years, And it's certainly not just Mr. Ford. I think at all levels of government, and how many minutes have we been talking before we talk about this, our neighbors south of us, but there's been this whole view that the rules don't really matter anymore, the unwritten rules, and unless there's a police officer who's going to come barging in and saying you've broken the law, that the usual way of doing things has been thrown out the window, and that should be really disturbing to Canadians. I mean, at the end of the day, I guess we're going to have to start writing these rules down, but there's always been a way of doing things that seems to have been forgotten, or at least there's been maybe politically smart people who have said, yeah, but it's not written down anywhere. There's no rule that says it has to be done this way. And it's true. The minister and the minister, of course, can delegate it to his staff. The minister, at the end of the day, is the boss. But, that's a dangerous approach to have all that power in his office, and, well, in this case, in his office or her office.
I can think now that, look, in the States, the Republicans have control of both the House and the Senate. Here in Ontario, Doug Ford, no disrespect intended to either of the other parties, but they certainly haven't been able to mount much in the way of opposition over the last 7 years or so. Federally, the Conservatives seem to be infighting now, which clears the path, I think, a little more for Prime Minister Carney. I could go on, and I just wonder if that might be part of the reason for this, John, or how do we go back to following some of those unwritten rules and conventions that you allude to?
I like the first part of your question. The reasons. I mean, I think the reasons. I think the reasons are human nature. Once in a while, someone said, "Well, you know what? It's always been done this way. That's the convention. That's the quote unquote unwritten rule. But it's not written. What if we broke it?" And they broke it, and the sun came up the next day, and they were still in power. And I suspect it's just become easier and easier to just bypass the usual way of doing things. How do you address it? The obvious answer is twofold. One, you're going to have to start writing some of this stuff down, which is unfortunate because there's oftentimes a bit of gray area, a bit of nuance. Politics is more of an art than a science, et cetera, et cetera. But the second thing is hopefully change the culture. And as you and I have discussed numerous times, part of that is on our shoulders to say this is unacceptable. We are not interested in government like this. But I got to tell you, having knocked on a lot of doors in my time, it's not the type of discussion that voters usually engage in about the style of government or the way in which you've sort of gone off the usual way of doing things.
Of course, those are all the kitchen table issues that you get at the door, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
John, always appreciate the time you make for the show for these important conversations. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you, Mike.
John Malloy, former Liberal MPP and Cabinet Minister, now, of course, the director of the Centre for Public Ethics at Martin Luther University College. Look, I think I would encourage us to just set aside our political ideology here. Let's not be partisan. And I get it. And I made reference to it at the beginning of this. The whole, did you spend $10.8 million to fund a strip club, Mr. Premier? Stop with the sensationalism, okay? I think we, as objective observers of this provincial government, can recognize that this is bad. This is really, really bad, where you have a minister in charge of a $2.5 billion file, and he doesn't really seem to have a clue as to how the money within that file has been allocated. And scrutiny and analysis of that file finds that government-friendly organizations and or companies were given preferred treatment or preferred monies even over organizations that met more of the stated criteria. It's not a good look. And it harkens back to the very early days of this provincial government and the Greenbelt scandal, which eventually seemed to go away. Let's not even talk about the RCMP investigation. We'll just leave that aside. But here we are, and this government seems to be operating in the same way. Even if you are an ardent, devout conservative supporter, this has got to chafe your chaps, doesn't it? We're talking $2.5 billion of our dollars that are wrapped up in this fund, and clearly not all of those dollars are being used for the purposes that they were intended to be used for. We got to change some things here. And I'm sorry, I'm not trying to give a free pass, because this is awful behavior on the part of the government of the day. It makes you wonder if they even know how to operate in the various ministries. But part of the problem here is, in my opinion, the lack of any meaningful opposition. Doug Ford is cruising right now at Queen's Park. Cruising. And I will submit to you that if you don't want Mark Carney to start cruising in Ottawa, you'd better hope that the federal Conservatives get their house in order, because ain't no opposition that's not fighting with itself right now, the House of Commons, at least from where I'm sitting. What do you make of the Skills Development Fund? The management of your tax dollars by this allegedly conservative government in Ontario. Would love to hear your thoughts on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
But at the end of the day, you reach a consensus between them. That's how it's supposed to work. And what the Auditor General's report showed is that it was political staffers. It was conservative political staffers who were making the decisions, which is outrageous. It lacks transparency. And guess what? It doesn't protect the minister. And whoa, he's discovered that, because he's got nothing to offer. He can't say, well, I was just acting on the advice of my officials.
That's John Malloy, former Liberal MPP and cabinet minister, now the director of the Centre for Public Ethics at Martin Luther University College in Waterloo. Ethics, you say, Mr. Malloy. Look, I'm going to be honest with you, because it's the only way I know how to be. I kind of like Doug Ford. He strikes me as the kind of guy that you'd love to sit down and have a beer with. But other than that, I'm really starting to question his ability to lead Canada's largest province. I mean, the man talks a good game. He talks just like you and I would talk. He shoots from the hip, right? He tells great stories. But I'm wondering whatever happened to this guy.
We're buying hamburgers and hot dogs and flipping.
You remember when he first came into office? That's what was going to happen. He demanded a 4% reduction across the board in every department. He told municipalities to go find those same savings, because he and his late brother, Rob, were seasoned municipal politicians who promised to end the gravy train. So he gets into office at Queen's Park. This is what we're going to do. We're going to cut expenses, subscriptions, travel, office expenses, you name it. We're buying hamburgers and hot dogs, and we're going to flip them. So said Ontario Premier Doug Ford back in 2018. And if you pay attention to this Skills Development Fund, which our Auditor General has been paying attention to, the gravy train stops directly at the door of Ontario PC headquarters. Because if you are friendly to this government, if you donate enough, if you help enough, then you are getting kicked back, it seems, from this Skills Development Fund. And moreover, you've got a minister in charge of that fund who isn't really in charge of it. You've got ministry staffers making the decisions as to who gets the money from the fund. Look, you can be as folksy as you want. You can flip as many hamburgers and hot dogs as you want. You can dig as many Torontonians out of the snow as you want. You can chase down as many shoplifters from the big box store. Where did he say went? Home Depot, I think. Chase them all down. This is great. But you've got to run the business of the province here. I feel like we're in high school and it's a popularity contest. And I recognize politics has very much become that popularity contest, right? It's the football quarterback or the prettiest girl that gets elevated to the position of power because they're the most popular and they don't know how to run the damn show. And we are just hemorrhaging money provincially and federally. And I'm just starting to question who the heck is in charge around here and how do they get away with stuff like this. It's a real big mess, and I don't know how the province gets out of it. But as I said earlier, even if you are the most passionate supporter of progressive conservative politics in this province, you've got to be concerned with what you're hearing right now. This is the Mike Farwell Show on 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. I don't know what your relationship is like these days, but in our house, we can be sitting in the same room, or sometimes doing what I like to call playing upstairs, downstairs, where I'm downstairs with my TV watching my thing and my beloved's upstairs with her TV watching her thing. But there will be an exchange of Instagram reels, and one that my beloved sent to me on the weekend while we were sitting on opposite ends of the same couch. We could have just, held over the phone. Passed over the phone. But either way, this is how our relationship works these days. And it works for us. We're quite happy these days. Anyway, one that she sent me was one of the cutest things that you'll ever want to see. And it was a video of several scenes, more than I can count, quite frankly, of people getting dogs as gifts. They're coming out of boxes under Christmas trees. They're being handed over by surprise. They come running out of other rooms, whatever the case may be. And those little doggies' tails were a wagging like you wouldn't believe, because they're so happy to be surrounded by the people who were so excited to see them. I bring that up because you don't need an Instagram reel to have this happen. You see, you could just participate in this weekend's Home for the Holidays adoption event. It is being put on by our friends at Positively Forever, and the executive director and founder there is Paige Chambers, who joins us more to talk about it. Paige, good morning.
Good morning.
You tell me a little more about Positively Forever. Why did you found it, and what do you do?
Sure. So yes, I am the founder of Positively Forever. This was, as many of our volunteers like to refer to it as, my mat leave project gone rogue. I had been in the rescue world for a long time previously, and I just decided during maternity leave I am not the type of person to sit still and do nothing. So I turned my little rehoming organization into a fully nonprofit incorporation that's also a registered charity within Canada. So we went from literally only having a couple dogs a month to this year we've had over 315 dogs through the rescue. So we help from many different communities. We believe that dogs, all deserve a chance to find their forever, regardless of their borders and where they come from. So we have partners that we work with from Texas. We have Manitoba partners. We help local animal welfare services, and we also help out in local rescue situations in our area as well.
Paige, it strikes me, you talk about more than 300 dogs recently. I mean, my goodness, it must feel overwhelming at times that there are so many in such need.
It is. And, a lot of people don't really understand the crisis as a world we're in. It's not just Canada anymore. It's a world. A lot of other countries are seeing very similar situations to what we are. And I mean, some of them even worse. We work with the partners we do because we try to help the most that are in need, whether it be because, they're being overlooked or they have medical that they need or whatever it may be. It can be really overwhelming. And I will say, it's hard to see dogs in these situations on a daily basis because as the founder, it's my job to do a lot of the intake. And I have people approaching me daily, multiple times a day. And it's tough, but it's also super refreshing when you get to see a dog go onto their happy tails and into their forever home, because that's what we're in it for. That's what we're trying to do, is to find these dogs there forever.
Absolutely. And boy, I admire you so much for it. I'm a huge pet person, animal person, primarily dogs. And I love to see these success stories at the end of the day. And on that note, I know that your organization, Positively Forever, was involved with the recent recovery of a group of puppies who were abandoned alongside a rural road. Can you give us an update how they're doing? Have any been rehomed as of yet?
So they are all still currently in our care because they are still receiving medical. So we have 5 in our care. So we have Daphne, Oscar, Tigger, Chase, and Dash. And they're all doing great. Honestly, I couldn't ask for better pups. They just are dealing with some unfortunate medical situations that we are trying to get a handle on before they become adoptable. But they're doing awesome. I really have no complaints on them.
Very glad to hear that. Okay, so what I wanted to talk to you about today, and I alluded to at the beginning, is this coming Saturday, noon until 4:30, the Home for the Holidays adoption event. What's it all about?
So we decided that we wanted to host a very large adoption event in November to try and get as many dogs in homes before the holiday season. We truly believe that, a lot of people like the idea of getting an animal for Christmas, but we also have seen in the past in a lot of studies and things that have come out that people may get a dog for Christmas and then maybe it's a quick decision and they're not really thinking it through and the dog doesn't have time to decompress and really show who they are. And they end up having to return them to either the shelter or the rescue after Christmas because it wasn't what they anticipated. So our goal with the Home for the Holidays campaign is to get dogs in the home, decompressed and comfortable and ready for the holiday season ahead of them. And also because, you know what, the more dogs that we can get in, especially at this time of year when it's, the weather is turning and a lot of our northern partners are really struggling to find rescue help, the better, because a lot of those dogs will be left out in the cold. And if we can get dogs into homes, that means that it opens up more foster availability for us.
So you're located in Tavistock on Maplewood Side Road. Is this happening at your location, or how can we participate in the Home for the Holidays adoption event?
So I am based in Tavistock myself, but we are actually partnering with Transitions Acres, which is on Maplewood, and they have offered their lovely property for us to host this event. So we're kind of working in partnership with them because they also believe the same things that we do and that, these dogs need to get in homes. So things to expect at this event and how to get involved. Come on out between 12 and 4. The address is on Maplewood Side Road. You are absolutely welcome at any of those times, and our adoptables will be there. So you will get a chance to meet and greet and kind of get to know them and see, who might fit your family. We will not be doing same-day adoptions, but it's a good way for you to meet a dog and see if they're going to suit what you're looking for, because that is part of our process, is the meet and greet process. Additionally to that, there will be some vendors that are local as well that will be there with food, drink, and other dog-related items. So you're welcome to come out and check that out. But yeah, that is the biggest thing. And if you can't make it, share it on your socials, because the more people that see it, the more chances that these dogs have at home.
How many dogs do you have available, and what age range? You chuckle. So many, eh?
I'm laughing because currently 2 of my team members are driving back from Manitoba with 30 dogs on board. We had 18 arrive on Saturday, and currently in care we have 32. So quick math, we have a lot of dogs. We have everything from 4 weeks old up to 8 years old right now. Obviously, everything under 8 weeks old, we are not yet ready to adopt out, but if people are interested, they're welcome to submit applications. But we literally have every breed, every size, every age, every temperament, and everything in between at this point. So we have something kind of for everyone.
What do you look for, Paige, in order to make a good match with the family that's looking to adopt?
So when we go through our adoption process, the first part is their application, and their application tells us a lot about them. It's going to lay out, their lifestyle, what they're capable of handling, what their day-to-day looks like. Because I know for me as a person, it's really important that a dog fit my lifestyle, and it is proved that we need to also have that as a factor for our adopters. And so we're looking at, what kind of home do they live in? Do they live in a condo? Do they live in an apartment? Do they have a fenced backyard? Do they have, are they home all the time? Are they home some of the time? And then we look at dogs that are, of similar volition. So are they, dogs that could be left alone for long periods of time? Are they a puppy and maybe need a little bit more training? Is this a really young and active family and they need a really young and active dog? So we're looking at a lot of those factors. We're also looking at what a person's capable of handling behaviorally, as well as if there is any medical underlying, like are they able to handle that long-term financially as well?
You mentioned earlier that this is not just unique to Canada. This is a kind of worldwide phenomenon where we're seeing so many pets in need of forever homes. Why do you suppose that is?
If you ask me, my personal opinion on this is, unfortunately, many places don't have spay and neuter laws and policies in place. And some countries and some areas also don't have access to affordable vet care to make that happen. And I know in particular, for example, we work with a partner, like Partners out of Texas. And I can tell you right off the cusp, it was estimated in August of 2024, there were 1 million stray cats and dogs on the street in Texas. And that is an incredible amount of dogs in it's a large state, but it's not that big. And to have that many dogs in that small of a space is absolutely astonishing to me. And once I kind of did some more research, I discovered that 90% of the shelters down there are kill shelters, which means the dogs go in, and if they are not taken in by a rescue or a person in a certain amount of time, they're euthanized. And they don't discriminate based on age, breed. They don't care. It's literally what the life cycle is of the dog in the shelter. What I realized was that down there's a lot of shelters that literally have a sign on the door that say, if your dog is ready for euthanization, or if your dog is ready to be surrendered, please go to the back for immediate euthanization. So what that tells me is if owners are trying to surrender their dogs, they're not even getting a chance. So more people are apt to throw their dogs out on the street and hope for the best than they are to maybe take them into a shelter. So big keys are, policies for spay and neuter, because a lot of those dogs wouldn't be spayed and neutered. And then, if you take one unfixed male and one unfixed female over the course of 6 years, you are going to have over 67,000 dogs if their offspring are also not sterilized. So for me, sterilization and spay and neuter are super, super important. And I think that could help in many ways if that was something worldwide we could see change, that there wasn't policy in place. But I mean, that's a pipe dream, and I don't think will ever happen. Right now, the biggest thing we can do is try to provide, affordable spay and neuter and get as many done as we can.
If Bob Barker couldn't convince us all to spay and neuter, I don't know who's going to do it, right?
Yeah, it's true. And honestly, people have their opinions on it, but the reality is we really don't need more puppies in this world. We need more chances for the dogs that are, out there and don't have a home.
Yeah, I would agree with that completely. So again, Saturday at Transitions Acres in Tavistock, the Home for the Holidays adoption event. We're welcome to show up anytime between noon and 4:30. But as you said before, this is not an adoption day. It's a chance just to meet, maybe fill out that application and maybe find that forever home.
Yeah, and I mean, we have some adopters that are already going through the process and know that this is going on, and this is a way of, getting those adoptions, in before those holiday seasons, because honestly, we get busy at the holidays, so does everybody else, and nobody wants to have a pet join their family and, go through decompression and deal with all the puppyisms at such a busy time of year. So if we can get it done sooner, that's better.
I think it's fantastic what you're doing. I hope it's a great event, and I really appreciate you making time on the show today to tell us about it, Paige. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having us.
Absolute pleasure. Keep up the good work. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Paige Chambers is the executive director and founder at Positively Forever. Gosh, I hope my beloved's not listening, because this pulls at my heartstrings, and I know how she's going to be then, right? She's like, we got to go to the adoption event on Saturday. We have to get another one. Rosie the pandemic pup needs a little brother or sister. Oh, my goodness. It does, though. It tugs at my heartstrings every time. I think about, we talked about it so much. So many people went and added pets to their homes, little fur babies during the pandemic. And then, oh, wait a minute. Real life returns. I'm not in the house as much as I used to be. I can't handle this. And so many pets being surrendered. It just, they bring so much to your life. You got to take care of them. I tease Rosie all the time, and I saw all these videos on the weekend. So many of you in the same boat that we were in, getting up on Sunday morning, right? All that new snow, and the dogs just loved it. Little Rosie was out that back door. I call her little. She's 4 ding-dang years old now, but she's always going to be a puppy, and she's got so much energy. And out that door she went, and she comes back to the back window to come back in the house, and we call it her Tony Montana look. She's got white all over her nose like she was snorting some cocaine. I'm just telling you, that's what she looks like, because she loves it outside in the snow, and I know many of your pets did too. And it's just so wonderful. And I joke with her all the time. I say, Rosie, I got to go to work right now because I have to keep you in the lifestyle to which you've grown accustomed. The run of the house, every piece of furniture is hers, the raw food diet, you name it, right? But these pets bring so much in return to us that the least we can do is help keep them from either a life on the streets like that, those million dogs and cats that Paige talked about in Texas, or worse, of course, euthanization. It ain't their fault that we messed all of this stuff up. So this Saturday from noon until 4:30 at Transitions Acres in Tavistock. It's the Home for the Holidays adoption event being held by Positively Forever. I'm not so good with the computers these days, but I'm going to get this shared on our Facebook page, okay? So you can find it there as well. Facebook.com/The Mike Farwell Show. And we'll share it as widely and as far as we can so that a lot of people can get out and hopefully have the time between now and Christmas to ensure it's a lower stress adoption and newcomer to your family. Let's help out at the Home for the Holidays adoption event on Saturday, noon until 4:30, Transitions Acres in Tavistock. This is the Mike Farwell Show on 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Okay, raise your hand if you belong in jackwagon jail this morning. I'm raising my hand. I'm doing it. I'm putting my hand in the air because I do deserve a sentence in jackwagon jail. One goes there, for failing to do one of the things that drives me nuts when we fail to do it. And that is properly, effectively clean off our vehicles of snow before driving them. I will admit, I was running a little bit late on my way to work at the hockey game yesterday. It's a distance that I can usually walk. I was in no shape, nor did I have the time to walk yesterday. So into the car I went. I was not wearing my sensible shoes or anything else that was really ready for the winter that occurred while I was at work. It occurred overnight. We woke up to it Sunday morning, yada, yada. I left the rink late Sunday afternoon, and I did the bare minimum. I did the bare minimum of cleaning off my vehicle. It's not a far drive home, but that's no excuse, is it? I'm using it as one, but that's no excuse. So in the interests of transparency, I was that guy yesterday evening, pardon me. This morning, on the other hand, I did a much better job. I made sure, first of all, I dressed for the weather. Like, I don't even care anymore. I have reached that wonderful stage of life of not caring about style. I pack extra shoes or indoor shoes when I come to work. I got a toque because I got no hair to mess up. I bundle right up, big boots, all the warm weather gear because it's the time of year that you need it. The gloves, everything. And again, I'm not trying to score fashion points on my way to work or from work in weather like this. Took all the time that was required. In fact, I listened to the entire 5:30 news because I crank it up in the car as I'm cleaning it off. And the entire 5:30 till 5:40 news went on with Mark Douglas and Christine Clark on All News Mornings today while I was properly cleaning off my car this morning. So while I may have failed for the very short drive last evening, when I got out this morning to come to work, I cleaned my vehicle off properly. I've received a number of messages from some of you who were annoyed with the people who were like me yesterday still being like that this morning and not properly cleaning off their vehicles. Let's make this the winter that we brush our cars clear of snow before we drive them. It took me 10 minutes this morning to effectively, properly clean off my car because I hadn't done it yesterday. Guess what? That's what we do in the winter, okay? Put some extra time into your schedule and make sure you're cleaning your vehicle off completely before you're driving it. Not only is it a nuisance, if not dangerous, to other drivers. If you've got snow blowing off your roof into their line of sight, or worse, ice chunks, etc., you're not safe because you can't see completely. Let's make this the winter that we clean off our cars effectively. And yes, winter is upon us. Don't worry. We're going to give you a mulligan on this one because it's going to be gone by Wednesday and you won't need to worry about it again. But when it comes back in 41 days, when winter starts, this is the winter we clean our vehicles, okay? This is the Mike Farwell Show. 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. I love me some Archies, taking us back to the late 1960s with a little bit of sugar as we get into This Week in Music History, something we do every Monday, 11 a.m. here on the program. And maybe, just maybe, a little piece of trivia about that song, Sugar, that you did not know before. All will be revealed in this conversation with our good friend and musicologist, Brian Allison, who joins us for This Week in Music History every Monday morning on the show. And I'll remind you that you can also follow along on social media. Brian's Facebook page has the same name, This Week in Music History, and you can get these tidbits and so many more. Good morning, Brian.
Hi, Mike.
You cleaned off your car like a good citizen today, didn't you?
I park in the garage, so I clean the car off.
Do you know
use my garage for what it's supposed to be used for?
Attaboy.
Parking the car.
Not everybody does that, which is because as somebody that does not have the garage, I'm like, why would you not use that garage?
Very few people, I find, park actually in the garage. You walk along the street and their garage is open and it's just a big storage facility.
Exactly. And I will be honest, I cursed many like you this morning because I could tell when I was out there on the highway who came out of a garage and who did not. So
it's a nice feeling.
It is a nice feeling. I want to start with recent This Week in Music History. In fact, on this very day, 2 years ago, explain to me how, good sir, the Beatles had a chart topper.
What an amazing story. So it's just the Beatles to me doing something that nobody else has ever done again. So the Beatles topped the UK chart on December 10th, 2023 with their single Now and Then, which made them the act with the longest gap between their first number one and their last number one. So it was 60 years after From Me to You topped the charts. And then they put out this song called Now and Then, and it also topped the charts. And it's an incredible story. There's a great video. You can watch it on YouTube for free. It's called The Beatles Now and Then, the Last Beatles Song. It's about 15-minute long documentary about how they actually did this. And they had this cassette tape of a song that John had been playing around with, just strumming or playing on a piano and singing some lyrics. And they decided they were going to make this into an actual recording. And because it was a cassette and they didn't have the technology years ago, it was really tough to clean up. You want to be able to isolate the vocal track. There was a lot of background noise and his piano playing, and they wanted to sort of clean it up. And now we have the technology to do that. And you can see this in the video where they strip it right down to just his vocal, and you've got this crystal clear, beautiful vocal of John singing this song Now and Then. And then the Beatles, Ringo and Paul added, their parts. They even went back and dug up an old guitar piece that George Harrison had recorded before he had passed away and added it onto the song. So you've got, a song topping the charts with two members who are no longer with us. Like, just an incredible feat. And to say nothing of the fact that it's a great song. Like, I just love to listen to that song. So hats off to the Beatles for, going out on top again.
I'm going to go find that doc on YouTube and enjoy it later today. I could use it on a day like this, I think.
It's really, really interesting. I've watched it probably half a dozen times myself, and I'm just entranced by how they did this.
Also, in very recent history, This Week in Music, just 3 years ago, Oh, Taylor Swift. Why'd you have to go and break the internet?
Tay broke the internet. Yeah, so Taylor Swift on November 15th, 2022, put her tickets, or pre-sale tickets, for her Eras tour onto Ticketmaster, and it literally crashed the site. It was just a big, giant mess. 2.4 million tickets were sold, the most for one artist ever in a single day. Like, that's just a baffling number. But there was also a lot of fans who were really upset because the Ticketmaster site crashed because there was so much activity on there. They couldn't fulfill all the ticket requests in the short time. And, of course, we have the bots that are, buying tons and tons of tickets for resale, and that frustrated people. So it led to frustrated fans, a federal investigation. It was a big mess. But of course, the Eras Tour became the highest grossing tour of all time, the first ever tour to surpass $1 billion in revenue. And when they say Taylor Swift is her own economy, it's really true. She comes to a city with a tour and brings her own economy with it. It's incredible.
All right, let's go back to my favorite decade in music, and that is the 1970s. And I got to admit, I've always been fascinated by this guy. Don't mind his music at all. And has he ever had staying power? I'm talking Rod Stewart this week in 1976.
Rod the Mod. So November 13th, 1976, Rod started an 8-week run at number one on the U.S. singles chart with his song Tonight's the Night. And it was his second U.S. number one, made it to number 5 in the U.K., and his homeland didn't chart quite as high, but it was very regularly played in the USA. It was a huge song. Some radio stations weren't keen on playing it. It was fairly, the lyrics were, a little bit heavy, apparently being about the seduction of a virgin. But, it still topped the charts. Canada and Australia pushed it to number one as well. Rod ended up caving, and he did record a version with sort of some toned-down lyrics, but the original version remained the classic, and people still love Tonight's the Night. It's constantly voted as, one of the top songs on your Get Busy mixtape if you're making one. Some trivia. Who was that sultry female with the French phrases in the background of the song? Any idea who that might have been?
I don't know who that was, Brian.
It was Rod's girl. It was Brett England, and she just happened to be in the studio while he was recording, and he said, why don't we get some dirty talk on this? And so she whispered some French phrases into the microphone, and they added those, and that made the song even more sexy. So, yeah, hats off to Sir Rod.
Is that where Elaine got the idea in the Seinfeld episode to leave it on Jerry's tape when he was doing stand-up?
It could be.
Borrowed from that. There you go.
The dirty talk. Yeah, I forgot about that episode.
Little bit of trivia on Rod Stewart's Tonight the Night. Little bit of trivia on Sugar Sugar, the Archies. That's the song we started this week in music history with. This week. We'll get into that and more as we continue with Brian Allison, our good friend and musicologist, here on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Every Monday morning at 11, we begin our week together with a look at this week in music history. And I know you always want more, looking for more. Where can I get more? Wow, there's a Facebook page of the same name, This Week in Music History. And it's managed by our good friend and guest on this segment every week, musicologist Brian Allison. So more tidbits just like you get here on that Facebook page, This Week in Music History. I started this week, Brian, with Sugar Sugar by the Archies. I absolutely love the song. Didn't know the little trivia about it, but this week in 1969.
Top of the charts.
Yeah.
Okay, what a big song this was. I can't hear the song without seeing the cartoon images and the band, their heads kind of bobbing back and forth in time to the music. It's just one of those forever linked images.
Absolutely.
But the Archies, went to number one on November 14th, 1969. It was the longest running one-hit wonder in the UK with 8 weeks at the top of the charts, which is pretty impressive. And it was the first number one performed by cartoon characters. So there you go. You've got a band that's, basically an animated feature, and it was the first time that had ever happened. The trivia, originally the song was offered to somebody else. It was written by Jeff Barry, and he had originally offered it to the Monkees because he thought it would suit them. But the Monkees turned it down, and they were in the phase in the late 60s where they were sort of trying to establish themselves as a serious recording band, and they didn't want to be attached to another sort of bubblegum type song, so they turned down Sugar Sugar, and they ended up giving it to this animated series, The Archies, and of course it was a huge success. So it's hard to believe it's 56 years ago, but there you have it.
And you got to wonder if the Monkees regretted it a little bit when it became such a big hit. I know they had their share, but another one never hurts, does it?
I would have thought the same thing, but again, they were in a phase where, they were making a film at that point called Head, and it was, really artistic, and they were trying to, be serious artists and be taken seriously after being the prefab four for so many years. So they didn't want to record it. But, the Archies certainly didn't turn it down, and it was a big hit for them.
This week in 1972, Brian, a really eerie coincidence for the Allman Brothers.
Yeah, scary story. So 24-year-old bassist Barry Oakley, he was one of the founding members of the Allman Brothers Band, and he was involved in a collision while driving his motorcycle in Macon, Georgia. And the coincidence is that the accident occurred one block from the intersection where his bandmate, Duane Allman, had been killed almost a year ago to the day. October 29th, 1971, Duane Allman died in a motorcycle crash. So Oakley, he had this kind of bad crash at this intersection. Medical was called, and he refused medical. He thought he was going to be just fine. And he went home. He left, and they towed his bike somewhere, and he went off home, hitched a ride with somebody apparently, and went home. And then 3 hours later, he ended up calling an ambulance. He had terrible pain in his head. He was taken to the hospital where they determined he had cerebral swelling from a fractured skull, and he passed away within an hour of arriving at the hospital. So, it was just a sad thing. And like Duane Allman, he was 24 years old. They were both 24 when they passed away at a motorcycle accident at the same intersection virtually. Scary, scary stuff.
Absolutely scary stuff. Many would say punk rockers, the Sex Pistols, were scary enough, but they make news this week in 1977.
Boy, did they ever. Yeah, November 12th. So their album, Nevermind the Bollocks, Here's the Sex Pistols, hit number one in the UK. You can say that it did so on the merits of its music. You can say that it did so on the merits of the hype that surrounded the Pistols and all the controversy that they created, but it was number one. And, first of all, the charts weren't happy with the name of the album because Bollocks is basically the English version of BS. So they didn't like that. There was even a store owner that was charged for having the record on display in his window because they thought it was obscene. And then there was, of course, the outrage around the lyrics to Anarchy in the UK, and then God Save the Queen, of course, and which eventually reached number one in the charts on the 11th of June, 1977. It was crazy. But the interesting part about it was the New Musical Express, who had the charts in England at the time, they refused to print the name of the song or the name of the Sex Pistols. So for the first time in history, the number one position when you looked at the charts was a large black line because they refused to print the name of the song and the name of the Sex Pistols.
You gotta love. They knew they were doing the right thing, right? Like they always say, no press is bad press, and the Sex Pistols knew exactly what they were doing.
They were pushing buttons.
Yep, exactly.
That was the intention of the band, was to push a lot of buttons, and they pushed buttons. They did it. And they did it very well.
All right, Brian. 10 years ago, yesterday, we lost Andy White. Here's the thing. He was almost a member, or he was a member of the Beatles. Please explain.
It's a funny kind of a story because so when the Beatles first went in to record their very first single, Love Me Do, George Martin, who was the producer, of course, he didn't know the band that well, and he didn't really think Ringo Starr was that great a drummer. He wasn't impressed with his skills. So he said to the band, we're going to record the song, but for the session, I'm going to have professional drummer Andy White do the session. And then you guys can do whatever you want with Ringo when you're playing live. But for the session, we're going to have Andy White do this. Thank you very much. So Andy White played on Love Me Do. Ringo did not. And Ringo was, bared the scars for this for years. In fact, even, years later when he would talk to George Martin, he would say, you didn't let me play, did you? And they would sort of rib each other about it. So, yeah, Ringo eventually played on the single that was released in the U.S., but the original single that was released in the U.K. was Andy White. And, yeah, he passed away in 2015 at 82 years old, but he was briefly a member of the Beatles as a studio stand-in.
Even though he lives now in the United States, at least I'm pretty sure that he does, we should all take a moment on Wednesday to wish Neil Young a happy 80th, Canadian music icon.
He's incredible. I saw him last summer, and you'd never know he was 79 or 80 years old. He still plays an incredible show.
And on November the 14th, which is this Friday, we celebrate the birthday of Terry Reid. But I've never heard of him, so why am I celebrating this birthday?
Well, when I'm done telling you this, you're going to be very interested in why you've never heard of him. So, in the late 60s, one of Britain's top bands was the Yardbirds. And the Yardbirds were dismantling. They were sort of falling apart. Now, keep in mind, the Yardbirds had introduced the world to three legendary guitar players, Jeff Beck, Eric Clapton, and Jimmy Page, all members of the Yardbirds. So when the band was dismantling, Jimmy Page was looking to start a band of his own. And he had been recommended by a friend to call Terry Reid. And he called Terry Reid and he said, I'm leaving the Yardbirds, and I'm going to start my own band. And would you be interested in coming down and being our lead singer? Terry turned him down. He said, I don't think I want to do that. But he said something to the effect of, I know this other guy. He's a pretty good singer. You should call him. His name's Robert Plant. And to add further contribution, he said, and if you're looking for a drummer, I know this other guy, John Bonham. He's pretty decent, and he's been looking for a gig too, so you could try him. And the rest is history. By the early 70s, Jimmy's band, who he initially named the New Yardbirds and renamed Led Zeppelin, were the biggest band on the planet.
So Terry Reid assembled Led Zeppelin for us.
He assembled and turned down the chance to be their lead singer. And it gets even better. So, of course, Led Zeppelin went on to be huge. I mean, just a massive band, one of the biggest in history. Later in 1969, Terry gets a call from Ritchie Blackmore, and their lead singer, Rod Evans, was leaving. Would you like to join Deep Purple? And he turned him down, too. He said that Deep Purple was too metal for his style, quote unquote, and decided he was going to go and do his own thing. And, Terry went on and had a decent recording career, but when you think of the what if, I mean, he could have been the lead singer of Led Zeppelin. He could have been the lead singer of Deep Purple. And instead, you and I are sitting here remembering Terry Reid and not really knowing who he is.
I'll never forget him now, guaranteed. All right, before I let you go, I can't talk about Led Zeppelin without talking about the Rolling Stones, or in this case, Rolling Stone. And I was always fascinated with this magazine, Brian. It launched this week in 1967.
Sure did. First issue of Rolling Stone magazine hit the newsstand. So it was founded by Jan Wenner and a writer named Ralph Gleason, and it was a San Francisco publication at the time, and was really just put in as an alternative magazine to talk about music and politics and things like that. And that's exactly what it did. The very first issue had John Lennon on the cover wearing his costume from the film he was doing at the time, How I Won the War. And it went on to be sort of the gold standard for publication of music. I kind of have a love-hate thing with Rolling Stone magazine. Sometimes I think it's a great publication. Other times, they've had some scathing reviews of some bands that have gone on to do great things. We just talked about Led Zeppelin. Rolling Stone magazine hated Led Zeppelin when they came out. They said they were the worst band they'd ever heard. They didn't want to, do much press about them because they thought they were going to flounder. And they turned out to be, one of the greatest rock and roll bands ever. So they've got it wrong and they've got it right on certain occasions. But yeah, certainly you didn't get much bigger than Rolling Stone magazine through the 60s, 70s, and even beyond.
Certainly did not. Always enjoy these chats, Brian. As always to you, thank you very much for being here.
Thanks, Mike. Look forward to talking to you next week.
Same. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Brian Allison is our good friend, musicologist, who joins us every Monday morning, 11 a.m. for This Week in Music History. And don't forget, if you just can't get enough, there's a Facebook page that Brian operates of the same name called This Week in music history. So you can read a little more about what we just talked about and get even more tidbits right there on Facebook This Week in Music History. Brian Allison joins us every Monday at 11 to share some of those memories, and we have a couple of laughs. Who knew? Terry Reid turned down the chance to be the lead singer of Led Zeppelin and Deep Purple. I think we would have remembered him differently had he made different decisions. All right, I'm going to get you to the 570 News Center for an update. And then something else we do every Monday morning. David Drewe, former Conservative Party staffer, joins us in studio for Drewe's Views. We'll be talking about that federal budget. We'll be talking about our Prime Minister. And why are the narratives all bad right now for the Conservatives? That conversation coming up. Drewe's Views next on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
Has anybody heard from Crazy Dave? Has anybody heard from Crazy Dave? Has anybody heard from Crazy Dave? I haven't seen hide nor shaggy head of that boy in 4 years. But you'd know him if you met him. Played harmonica like the cat lost his balls. Yep, Crazy Dave. Had a toothy smile as big as my hand. Always chewed on a toothpick or a long blade of grass, drank from the bottle, rolled the worst cigarettes, was impervious to insect bites. It's one of the best damn tree-planting highballers east of Prince George.
That is a description of Crazy Dave, but that is not David Drewe. Neither, I should point out, is David Drewe the Crazy Dave in question. That is Scott Wicken, a tremendous spoken word performance artist that just puts together things like that. Seem to work here.
And nobody can prove I'm crazy.
Nobody can prove you're crazy. David Drewe joins us every Monday morning, 11:30, to share his views with us on Drewe's Views. David is a former Conservative Party staffer, currently operates negotiating change, government relations, stakeholder engagement strategies. Let's talk about leadership, David. This has been on my mind
Before
a
we
lot.
get to that,
yes,
I have another sidetrack entrance for us, because I was listening to This Week in Music.
Okay.
And you discussed the Archies.
I love the
And
Archies.
last time I thought I was going to be asking the Hive Mind, and right away you knew the reference I was talking about. Do you remember a live action, I think it was just a one-off special of the Archies? The only reason I remember it, and the only thing that I remember about it, was John Larroquette played Reggie Mantle before Night Court.
Really?
Yes, I had no idea. But when I was watching Night Court after a while, I'm like, I remember that guy from, and this is the only reason that special sticks in my head. So I guess judging by the look on your face, I will ask the Hive Mind. Does anybody else remember a live action evening Archie special with John Larroquette as Reggie Mantle?
That's wild. That reminds me of the live-action Spider-Man TV movie with Parker Stevenson as Spider-Man and Matt LeBlanc in a ketchup commercial well before Friends fame. Anyway, you went to the Hive Mind. That's what happens. All right, let's dive in. Talk leadership, which, as I mentioned, has been something on my mind quite a bit lately. We'll start with the leader of the federal Liberals, a.k.a. our Prime Minister. Okay, so we have a budget.
And I guess we have a budget.
Sort of.
It really didn't make much news. And if the Liberals did kind of end up getting their budget big-footed by other good news for them. But just on the budget itself, I'm not sure really what would have been sticking with the public at this point. I don't know what their communication strategy around it really would have been. But to me, the most ambitious and best thing coming out of it is the tax credit, the super write-off, where you make a productivity enhancing purchase, and rather than writing it off over the life of the piece of equipment, you get to write it off incredibly quickly, in most cases within 1 year. And that will encourage investment in productivity in a whole lot of ways. And I heard the best description of this for people who think it just results in job losses. I'm sure we've all worked at one time or another in a job where all the technology and tools we worked with were horribly outdated. I'll cite this as an example. When Clarica changed their entire life insurance process, but what it allowed them to do was, rather than every question on that life insurance questionnaire getting answered one, then the next one, then the next one. It allowed each one of those questions to be worked on simultaneously. So the turnaround time on life insurance policies went from about 6 weeks to about 2 weeks. That's productivity. Nobody lost their jobs. But customer satisfaction went way up. Policy retention went way up because people had less time to want to change their mind and have second thoughts. Like, there's a whole lot of this productivity stuff we need to get into, and we can't do it as you, me. We need employers and everybody like that to do it. So this is huge. Now, I'm going to throw this caution out on productivity. One of the most huge reasons why we've had a drop in productivity is because the price of oil has dropped. When the price of oil was at record highs, the oil sector was a lot more productive. So you have to remember it. Same thing with any extraction economy. Sudbury, it's nickel and copper. You know, those miners are a lot more productive this week than they were 2 months ago, just based on the price of copper shifting. So when we talk about productivity, yes, it is an absolutely great goal to chase. But you have to be careful on how you measure it, because there are externalities that can sometimes bump it up and down like crazy. But the budget, again, does it seem like it's just the latest in a series of overpromises and underdeliveries from this government?
Yes. Yes, it does.
That to me is the biggest reason why it was so easy to get big-footed by a floor crossing, was there wasn't anything there that matched expectations, and the only thing that really seemed dramatic about it at all was the one thing we all knew was coming, which was the defense spending. But even the housing advocates are looking at it saying, okay, so forget about spending what we need. You didn't even spend your platform commitment in this budget on housing. So there were just so many ways, whether it was down to the line item on housing, whether it was the budget cuts that we're expecting we need to the public service, whether it was anything. This budget just did not meet up to the expectations that they themselves had set. And that's just the latest. How many times were we led to believe that a deal was imminent with Donald Trump to put things away? And each time it didn't happen, but each time it was not Donald Trump who was saying we're close to a deal. It was our side saying we're close to a deal. And it just didn't happen. And so I don't know how much longer they can keep getting away with this. And I do not believe they intended... Sorry, before we get to that, because I'm just going to start stomping on the next topic on the Conservatives, but to put it in its most basic way of over-promising and under-delivering, we were promised elbows up. And at the summit last weekend, we saw Mark Carney and Donald Trump playing like flirty teenagers at the back of the classroom, doing the pew, 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 playing like finger guns at each other.
Yeah.
That's not elbows up. And I'm not even sure that it's the wrong thing that we're doing, but it is not what we were promised. And that is the problem that his government is going to have, because you can only talk about Chris D'Entremont for so many weeks. Eventually, you're going to have to talk about the budget. Actually, no, you won't. And you know why, Mike?
Because the week was even worse for the Conservatives?
Oh, no. This is the one hope the Liberals have coming. Do you remember? How far are we from the Grey Cup?
A week, I think.
Okay, so we're less than a week then away from the next list of major projects being announced. Remember, it was
tied to the Grey Cup?
Yeah, he didn't give us timelines in terms of anything. It was the first round was right before the Whatchamadigi. Then the next round was the Grey Cup. And then the third round's going to be right before the Stanley Cup.
Okay.
He gave us the calendar in sports championships. And so, yeah, we are expecting another round of major projects to come out. And somehow I think that's going to be a lot more attention-grabbing than anything in this budget. That's why he can get away with it.
Go Rough Riders is all I will say about that. So as bad a week as it was for Prime Minister Carney, as underwhelmed as we may have been by his budget, things were decidedly worse for Pierre Poilievre, no?
Oh, yeah. yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Things were so bad for Pierre Poilievre that the parliamentary nerd who's been in there for 20 plus years, who has the former speaker as his leader of the government in the House, missed his opportunity to raise an amendment, and it's very traditional to just say, let's throw the whole thing out. And it's disposed of, and it's just this thing that happens every budget. But he didn't realize he was supposed to do anything.
Well, this is the thing, and like, it had to be a mistake, right?
Oh, absolutely, but that's it. That, in and of itself, is absolutely insignificant. Absolutely insignificant. But why did it happen? That shows you that they were in disarray on budget day. The fact that they were not there to do all of the things that have been in the calendar for years and years and years. Somehow, they were thinking about other things that day, like calling up every member of caucus and reminding them of every mistake they've ever made or whatever it was. Horrible, horrible day when a team of that experience misses just the process goal. You know, it gives you just one more chance to put on your record why the budget sucks. They missed it. That was an opportunity for the news clips. They missed it. Oh, well. There was no good narrative for the Conservatives last week.
There's not one. They're losing members. Others are resigning. There are accusations of bullying, infighting, you name it.
Yeah. Okay, so Chris D'Entremont, I don't know if you saw the story on the weekend where apparently the last straw for him was when members of the House leadership team bowled into his office and nearly knocked over a staff member.
I didn't hear about the...
It's in the... Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I heard he was so happy to be welcomed with open arms by the Liberal caucus when he joined, but that was the extent of it.
Well, that's... This one is a bit more significant than the traditional floor crossing because it's a minority situation and the numbers are so tight. But, you know, even when there's a floor crossing from a fourth party to the hugest majority ever, there's always all this, oh my God, this changes everything. Fake applause. Fake applause is a large part of politics that you have to get used to. And we have some of the most highly paid trained SEALs ever who will stand up and applaud when required with all the vim and vigor required. And then there's the flip side of that. Have you been seeing the hostage videos from Conservative caucus?
The hostage videos?
Oh. Hi, I am faithful Conservative MPX for the riding of, and I am proud to say that Pierre Poilievre is the best leader we could ever have. There have been variations of this flying around, and you're just looking for the crazy blinks from them to indicate that they are okay. But that's creepy. Like, I cannot picture Harold ever putting a video out saying, yes, I am very loyal to Stephen Harper. Like, what is it when people start coming out and unprompted, apparently, start having these professions of loyalty? That's a little bit dear leader-ish, a little bit, no, like seriously, that's a little bit dictator-ish. That's a little bit head of state, not head of government, definitely not head of His Majesty's loyal opposition. It's weird. It's especially... Well, why are you doing that anyway? Now, you weren't doing it 2 weeks ago. Why all of a sudden do you have to feel this need to express faith in your leader? Is it because this stuff feels worse to you than it even looks to us from the outside? Oy.
Oy is about right. Okay, we're going to take a break. We'll continue. David Drewe here with Drewe's Views every Monday morning, 11:30. And we will get into, speaking of His Majesty's loyal opposition, how about His Majesty's son? He comes up in the conversation with David Drewe this morning as well on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. David Drewe owns negotiating change for your government relations and stakeholder engagement strategies. He's also a former Conservative Party staffer with none other than former Kitchener-Conestoga MP Harold Albrecht. And David joins us every Wednesday morning, or Monday morning. Don't move time ahead. Every Monday morning, 11:30 for Drewe's Views. We talked about the narratives for both the Liberals and the Conservatives already, and their leaders, Mark Carney and Pierre Poilievre, David. The NDP still exists, right?
In a lot of ways, they had the best week. because we heard nothing about them. So, Schrodinger's party, if you don't hear about them, do they exist? But given the week everybody else had, they win. It seems like some of them supported the budget, but nobody's really talking about it. So they win. As to what happens when we get to the next stage, who knows? But they really don't want an election, even though I think they have the least to lose. But when you just look at what they have on paper in terms of money, candidates, election readiness, no leader, it would be very risky and probably self-sacrificial for Don Davies to let them back into an election. But heck, even Elizabeth May is having a bad week when she's out there.
When does she have a good week? Let's be honest.
Well, no, but that's just it. She got noticed this week. She was out there saying, I'm open for amendments, and I know that the government can be dealing with amendments right now, and she's getting what she does best. She's getting all this attention about the way things should work. But other than the Parliament Hill Press Gallery, it's a tree falling in the forest and nobody's listening. And honestly, you're flipping through the news and it's Elizabeth May said something next. It's, so in a way, she was just reminding everybody of her own irrelevance. She's not running again. What happens if they force an election? So yeah. NDP had the best week out of everybody, I'm pretty darn sure, just because they didn't embarrass themselves and everybody else did.
All right. You mentioned His Majesty's loyal opposition earlier. I mentioned His Majesty's son. Why are you so upset with Prince Harry? In your notes, I will say you describe him as an ass.
Oh, these are words I can say?
How British of you. Sure.
Okay, yeah, he's an ass. He's a huge ass. Ass. Okay. He was watching the World Series wearing a Dodgers cap. The Prince of Canada was wearing a Dodgers cap. And his explanation for it afterwards was it was a condition of the invitation. He is a Prince of Canada. He is fifth in line to the throne. But he's up for sale. I'm sorry, he's an ass. If he did not realize that this was going to be an issue, he's stupid. But he's not stupid. He knew it would be an issue, but he wanted the money.
With all due respect, you're an ass.
Yeah?
Yes.
But why are you saying it?
Because, I can't wrap my head around this. I will admit, when I saw him at the game, because I was fully invested in the World Series, and I saw the Dodgers cap, I thought, wait a minute, aren't you the Prince of Canada? But then I realized, who cares? It's a hat. I'm Canadian. I don't follow that CFL thing with that Grey Cup stuff coming up. So does that make me anti-Canadian? He can cheer for whoever he wants to cheer for, and we have to get over our sensitive little selves.
No, this would be like Mark Carney cheering for the Dodgers.
He can. Why is cheering for a Canadian team of any kind a condition of holding office or royalty? It doesn't matter. You get to cheer for who you want to cheer for.
Wow, I wasn't expecting this pushback. This is hot. Spicy.
Well, because you're being an ass.
No, yes. I think it's entirely reasonable for the King of England to be cheering for Britain in the World Cup. And I think if he was cheering for Saudi Arabia or for Italy, it would be a little bit more of a headline.
You get to cheer for whoever you want to cheer for. That's the beauty of sports.
Yeah, and if the Prince of Canada decides he's cheering against Canada, we get to judge him accordingly.
See, that's where we get all twisted up. He's not cheering against Canada.
In a two-team system, if you are cheering for one, you are cheering against the other.
But just because one team's based in Canada doesn't mean you're cheering against the country. It just means you like the other team better.
Wow, and all this time I thought we were calling them Canada's team.
Yeah,
I thought you were doing that on the air myself.
I love the Blue Jays. I love the Blue Jays. They are Rogers'
By the way, do we
team.
have time for a quick change of subject, or we
got 75 seconds.
Okay. John Malloy has an excellent column in today's Record. And it's about potential conflicts of interest in the Doug Ford government and the direction of projects against staff advice.
Thank you for listening at 10 o'clock this morning when we discussed it.
Oh, I just want to throw out another possibility. I don't believe it applies in this case, but there was one case I can recall in Harold's office where he rejected the highest rated proposal and the most expensive in terms of government funding in favor of a much lower rated one. And that was because there was no way he was going to sign off on having his road repaved. Like, there are times when politicians go against recommendations because accepting the recommendation will just have everybody thinking they fixed the recommendation. I'm sure this wasn't it, and I will catch the John Malloy segment later.
Which was exactly John's point, right? The politician should make that final call, or at least have some knowledge of it, instead of letting staffing minions go about the business.
They're accountable for it.
The minister is. The politician is.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that's just it. Like, I'd rather they are accountable for it than anyone else. And in the case of what we did in Harold's office, it was infinitely defensible. The mayor of Wilmot at the time was like, oh, man, you know how much this is going to cost? It's like, we'll make it up to you later. We'll really do our best to make this up to you later. But you get it, right? And so, yeah, I get it.
There you go. David, always enjoy these chats, but try being less of an ass next time, if you don't mind.
I always try.
Try. One day you'll succeed. David Drewe joins us every Monday morning at 11:30 for Drew's Views. And now we turn it over to Hughes. Rant or Rave coming up. Open lines to hear from you on the Mike Farwell Show. 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
Take out the papers and the trash, or you don't get no spending cash. If you don't scrub that kitchen floor, you ain't gonna rock and roll no more. Yakety yak.
Don't talk back.
Just finish cleaning up your room. Let's see that dust fly with that broom. Get all that garbage out of sight, or you don't go out Friday night. Yakety yak.
Don't talk back.
I feel like we have a lot to get into here during Rant or Rave today. It can be from the mundane, like, go ahead and try to convince me that it matters one tinker's darn. I mean, find me one tinker that has a darn to give about what stupid hat some stupid prince wore to a baseball game. I honestly cannot understand the fuss. You're allowed to cheer for whatever team you want to cheer for. That's the beauty of sports. Come on with your coming on. Then, of course, we have this ridiculous weather, and it's completely unnecessary. I'm feeling a little bit better, though, because I just found out during that news update from one of my other coworkers that I was not the only one who on Saturday mowed his lawn for the final time. I did do that, and I felt a little weird. I'm thinking, am I really out here mowing my lawn on November the 8th? But I was. Looked great, by the way, when I was done. And then, of course, 24 hours later, we are under a record-setting blanket of snow. What a weekend that was, which led to, of course, sidewalks that weren't shoveled, vehicles that weren't properly cleaned off, because we know this is all going away in a few days. This is just winter's warning. Hey, I'm here, and I have this power. Some of the more mundane things we could get into and rant and or rave about. And then, of course, you've got the serious stuff, like a counselor in Woolwich Township saying, are we going to have to declare insolvency here? Our reserves are low. Our taxes are too high. How are we going to collect all the money we need to stay afloat as a municipality? We should be a little bit concerned about this, if you don't mind my saying. Woolwich Township, 22% tax increase if they want to fix things. One of the counselors, Bonnie Bryant, at that budget meeting last week said, people in Breslau are paying $9,000 a year on their taxes, which made me feel a whole lot better about my taxes. But she's like, they can't afford more. They're already talking about selling their homes and moving away so that they can continue to afford to live. But to fix the mess that was made in part because municipalities have historically not implemented tax increases to keep up with necessary infrastructure repairs and whatnot. Now they're so far behind, they could be facing, they won't increase taxes by 22%, but whatever it is, it's a mess. That's happening in Woolwich. In Wilmot, they've got a consultant setting the budget for them, which makes you wonder about the ability or lack thereof of existing staff in the township. And I'm just wondering, are these smaller municipalities making the case for amalgamation, one regional government to rule us all. But these are legitimate concerns in the townships, as far as I can tell from here. That's much more serious. And then, of course, we could get into all kinds of other things, including the ongoing lack of a deal between Canada and the United States. Are our elbows up? Are our elbows down? We've got athletes fixing games so that bettors can win. They're taking bribes to do that. We've got the BBC, the British Broadcasting Corporation, saying, we're sorry. We demonstrated bias in editing a speech to make Donald Trump look bad. Believe you me, Donald Trump doesn't need any more help looking bad. But, that's an awful, awful look for a major media outlet like the BBC. See, lots on the table today. Let's get to the phones and begin rant or rave with our buddy, Jersey Bill. Good afternoon, Billy.
Yeah, well, there's certainly a lot to talk about in terms of the dysfunction of both government and opposition parties, not only in Canada, U.S., probably throughout the world, and a lot of things to talk about. But what interested me, and I almost felt like I wanted to call you during one of the Ranger Talk segments, but this talk about the USHL. Joining I don't know if you could call it the Canadian Hockey League anymore, since there's 16 American teams. But I'm not a hockey player. I'm horrible on skates, and I'd never shot a puck. But I'm interested in the organization of the whole thing, and how that league would be folded in. I'm also thinking of the fact that there's a kind of junior league desert between Sault Ste. Marie and Winnipeg, which includes Thunder Bay, who has its own league of 7 teams, which I think has teams on both sides of the border. Could that be folded into this UHL and give it a little bit of a Canadian content? So I'm just wondering what your idea is about. And also, when I looked them up, and they have 5 teams in Iowa and 3 in Nebraska. and the other thing I'm wondering is they also have the U.S. development team in Plymouth, which of course used to be an Ontario Hockey League city. So what is your feeling about all this?
Oh, Billy, it's a great question, and I really appreciate it. And if you'll allow me to use this as an opportunity to shamelessly self-promote, just for fun, a little bit of a side gig. It's not even a gig. I just do it for fun. And because I enjoy the league and the game so much. But I do this thing called the OHL podcast, and it comes out every Tuesday. And if you are not yet a subscriber, please subscribe so that you'll get the episodes every Tuesday when they come out. We talk about, obviously, the Ontario Hockey League. That's why it's called the OHL podcast. And this very issue, the idea of the USHL becoming a 4th league under the Canadian Hockey League banner, is something that we discuss. Right now, the Canadian Hockey League, the CHL, has the Western Hockey League, the Quebec Maritimes Junior Hockey League, and the Ontario Hockey League, right? Those 3 leagues, the QMJHL, the OHL, and the WHL, are all under the CHL banner. And there is talk about the USHL being absorbed into that. I would submit to you, and I'm not going to get too sportsy on you here on the show, please check out the next episode of the OHL podcast coming out tomorrow. It'll be released. You can listen to it. But I would suggest to you that this is something that sounds pretty appealing. It would make some sense because right now with the Memorial Cup, we have 4 teams in with a host team and 3 league champions. Well, if you added another league, you'd have 4 teams automatically competing for that Memorial Cup, this, that, the other thing. I think it just sounds good on paper. It's going to take a whole lot more work to actually make it happen, and I'm not sure that there is enough interest in doing that work, particularly from the USHL side. The National Hockey League ultimately will be controlling all of this because it's in their interests to get the best development for players coming into their league. I would argue the CHL provides that best development right now, but the National Hockey League, as much as we love the game and we call it our game, hockey, the National Hockey League wants to ensure the long-term viability and sustainability of junior hockey in the United States. And I think that the National Hockey League will play a large role in determining what this ultimately looks like. And I'm not sure the National Hockey League is going to be all that interested in allowing the USHL to be absorbed by the CHL, as in the Canadian Hockey League. So we shall see. I understand why it sounds appealing on paper. Again, the OHL podcast comes out every Tuesday. You should check it out sometime. You'd love it. I guarantee it. Liam, rant or rave to you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mike. I'm only going to rant about not being able to make a call yesterday at Rangers Talk yesterday. But I wanted to talk about more positive things just because there's just so much crap that I could rant about today. But anyways, here's what are my thoughts, really. So I am very grateful that yesterday I was able to broadcast my very first OHL Kitchener Rangers home game in the regular season stuff. I have to admit, it's quite a difference broadcasting in this type of weather versus August when it was still hot. And also, given that the stands were not as packed, it was a lot louder and stuff. I also think that the organization, the Rangers, did a good job having the Canadian Legion put on that Remembrance Day ceremony before a puck drop. It's very important that we show gratitude to those who've served in the Canadian Army and stuff, just because we have all the luxuries of today, including ranting about hats and stuff. And that's pretty much all I say, and I'm glad I had a chance to see you and Josh yesterday.
Thank you, Liam. It was great to see you at the Rangers game as well. I know Josh Piercy enjoyed it. We love being at the rink, and because you brought it up, I have to give a nod too. All weekend long, like the Kitchener Rangers just do things top shelf, don't they? The level of legacy induction of Pete DeBoer on Friday night, the former head coach and general manager, and then the Remembrance Day ceremony, because yesterday was the Remembrance Day game for the Kitchener Rangers. Just incredible stuff. So well done. I had a lump in my throat during that Remembrance Day ceremony yesterday, and it filled me with so much pride to be a Canadian, to live here, to think back on and reflect on the sacrifices that were made so we can sit here and bitch and moan on this rant or rave segment every Monday afternoon, just as one tiny example, right? I heard some ranting and raving about poppies and not wearing poppies last week. And again, the sacrifices that were made so that we can bitch and moan about poppies. That's the country that we live in today, thanks to people who were flat out, no holds barred heroes. Period. I was going to save most of that for tomorrow, but Liam got me onto it. And why not? Why not talk about it today as we head into Remembrance Day and those important ceremonies at cenotaphs around our community tomorrow? These veterans we owe a tremendous debt of gratitude to. We'll continue rant or rave on the Mike Farwell Show this afternoon. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Ranting and or raving is a Monday tradition here on the program. It's always busy. Just remember, if you try one line and you don't get through, try one of the other lines. You might be able to sneak in that way, but we'll move through as many calls as we can. Rant because you're upset about something. Rave because you want to sing someone's or something's praises. Right back to the phones. Sean, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. It's a rant. I tell you, so now we got a township talking about possible insolvency. I mean, the stuff that goes on in the townships. I mean, the putting off maintenance so they can do artificially low tax increases. I mean, this just goes on year after year after year. I mean, if there was never an argument for amalgamation as the townships, or at the very least, the townships maybe should be taken over by the region. It's just getting ridiculous. Sorry.
Sean, don't be sorry. And this is why I brought the issue up. Let me just play a little bit of the audio for you from last Tuesday's meeting of Woolwich Township Council when they were talking about the budget. And CAO David Brenneman had this to say, which explains in part how the township got its finances in the mess that it's in. Oops, it was my fault. I'm so sorry. I turned off my sound before because I was working on something else. This is what CAO David Brenneman had to say.
We are also in the position we're in now because we actually had increases that weren't keeping pace back in 2000. I think it was 2010 or 11. The roads and bridges inventory said at that time when we implemented a 1.5 infrastructure levy that we needed 4.4% per year just for roads and bridges. But now this council has received a report, just like other municipalities, that we have an 8.4% asset management overall gap that we need to address. Yes, I understand if we look on the microscope for the last 3 years, the increases have been significant. But if you look at the last 10, 15 years, you have to take that in the historical context as well. And that's part of the historical reason why we're in the situation we're at. Sometimes, like I said, there was 1 year you can look at there, we were told 0% in operating, 1.5 infrastructure levy. That in itself would have set us back in terms of some of our catch-up work on the infrastructure side.
So you knew more than a decade ago that you needed 4.4% every year just for infrastructure, and you funded it to the tune of about 1.5%. So you're falling behind right from the get-go. Now that gap is greater than 8%. But all this time and the last 3 years, the increases in Woolwich Township, 8%, 8%, 10%. Plenty high. Again, one councillor pointed to ratepayers in Breslau, $9,000 a year on their property tax. That's expensive. And now they're figuring out a way to pay the piper if they can. But this is what Councillor Nathan Cadeau had to say in Woolwich Township last Tuesday night.
There could be potentially a fourth option there, and that's that the township just files for insolvency. I think that we're at the point where the lowest tax rate, we have the lowest reserves. At what point do we just have to file insolvency if we can't afford to raise the money? And I mean, I'm serious about that. It scares me.
There you go. And it scares me. And it makes me wonder exactly what Sean said. What are we even doing with these smaller townships that don't seem to be able to mind their finances? One of the other factors in all of this, forget the gap that they've allowed to continue to grow over the years, but our townships, of course, have grown. Think about Elmira, Breslau, all of the building that has gone on there. So assessment growth goes up. Maybe that helps you keep things artificially low, if you will, by way of tax increases. But what happens when construction slows down like it has? This is what happens when construction slows down like it has. The assessment growth stalls. And then what? You're staring down 22% tax increases. It is a mess with a capital mess. Back to the phones for Dave, Farwell's Force member number 47. Good afternoon, Dave.
Good afternoon, Mike. I have a very simple question, so I'll ask it and hang up and listen. On your segment on puppies, why don't we go after the powers that be to shut down the puppy mills? Have a great day, Mike.
Thanks, Dave. I couldn't agree more. And I don't think our guest was too far off base either when she talked about the importance of spaying and neutering so that we don't have the pet population or the animal population growing exponentially. I think there are a couple of ways to solve this problem, but right now we're staring at the problem, and Positively Forever is trying to help, and they're having that holiday adoption event this coming Saturday in Tavistock. Details are on our Facebook page, facebook.com/The Mike Farwell Show. Check it out for yourself. This would be a great way to help out because Dave is not wrong. He knows what's going on here, and he recognizes that there are ways we could solve it if we had the courage to solve it or if we implemented the legislation to solve it. And just real quick on Farwell's Force member number 47, who Dave is, Farwell's Force came through in a big way on Friday afternoon. We got a call from Tony who said, I can't figure out, I don't know, how can I keep a poppy on my lapel? And Lori called from one of our local legions, branch 50, the Fred Geese branch, told us about the center pin that you can buy at any legion for $2. And so many of you went out, bought a bunch of them. That's posted on our Facebook page as well, facebook.com/The Mike Farwell Show. You came through in huge ways because why? You are a force for good, Farwell's Force. A force for change, a force to be reckoned with, but a force for good. And you came through in a very good way on Friday. Loved it. Still love it. Mark, you're on Rant or Rave. Good afternoon.
Afternoon, Mike. I got a story for you, Mike. Yesterday morning, I went to Tim Hortons, the one on Ottawa and King Street there.
Yep.
Bought a nice coffee and a donut, and I took it back to my car, and I was just enjoying it and had the radio on, and I got approached by two guys in a van, Mike, and they asked me if I wanted to buy a flat screen TV. And then I remembered, I listened to the news on 570, that there's a scam going on, that it's a ripoff.
It absolutely is, Mark. And as your phone fades in and out on me, I'll just use that as the opportunity to remind our listeners today, you're absolutely right. There are these scams going on right now. Bottom line is this. I know everybody wants a deal. Don't buy something out of the back of a van. We know better than this, right? If it sounds too good to be true, and if it's coming out of the back of a van, you know where it probably came from originally, right? Good job by you, Mark, listening to the station, not getting caught in the scam. Rant or Rave continues here on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Mondays, our Talkback Hour is reserved for your rants and or raves. Right back to the phones we go. Mike, Farwell's Force member number 37, good old Point Clark. Good afternoon.
Hi, Mike. I got a personal rant. I was driving back from the Waterloo region after visiting some of my friends on the weekend, and my rant has to do with high beams. Lower them, please. I don't need my eyes burnt and my cornea burnt out. I couldn't believe how many people didn't want to lower their high beams when I was driving back at night. My eyes almost got burnt out. And my second rant is with that Woolwich thing. I think a provincial supervisor needs to go in there and really audit the books. And I think they need to be taken over by the Ministry of Municipal Affairs, because they seem to be in a big mess. That's my thoughts, Mike.
All right, Mike, appreciate that. It's why I keep talking about amalgamation, and that supervisor might be somebody more experienced at a different level of government. Let's just have one local, regional government with experienced staff that can manage these sorts of affairs, because we have gotten ourselves in our share of pickles. Wilmot, Woolwich, I mean, I'm just waiting for the next shoe to drop around here. As for the high beams, low beams thing, two things occur to me. One is, it doesn't strike me that we have the same courtesy on the roads as we used to, or the same understanding of how things have long been done on the roads. But the other thing is, I get the feeling that vehicles, maybe this is just me, but I think the vehicles are actually riding higher or sitting higher, that everything seems like a high beam these days, not to mention those LED lights that seem to penetrate a little bit more forcefully. But that might just be my thought on it. I don't know, but I get the sense that the vehicles are riding higher, and those lights are brighter, and they pop, and you think it's a high beam even though it's not. Anyway, we continue Rant or Rave. Rory is next. Good afternoon, my friend.
Good afternoon. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing really well. How are you?
Not too shabby for a Monday, I'd say.
Attaboy.
Not sure I like what's outside, but hey, it's supposed to be gone by the weekend and back to double digits, right?
I'll take it. Our buddy Kitchener-Cooney told us that earlier today. You bet.
I'm holding him to it. Couple of brief things, Mike. First, I just wanted to say I had to go out and grab a couple of poppies over the weekend for Remembrance Day ceremony that the family attended in New Dundee, and it took me 3 stores to find a poppy. And one of the stores that I walked into that didn't have a poppy is on the Legion's website as a partner for supplying poppies. So shout out to New Dundee Emporium for having poppies. And it's, maybe not a large enough sizing, but 1 in 3 is a little bit scary if that's the trend these days for poppy placement. second piece on municipal taxes. Well, Mike, you and I have talked about municipal taxes for a long time. I think the townships are in a really tough spot. Governments before them have tried to keep taxes low, and now we're being faced with that dilemma, while we also try to keep taxes low for the people that are paying for it today. And I might be bold as to say at this point, Mike, where's the provincial government in all this? This is part and parcel of their jurisdiction. And I'm going to go out on a limb, Mike, and say right now that the townships need a bailout from the province right now. They need some extra cash in order to get the reserves and their books back up to even par. And then that might put them in a better position to structure next year and future years more responsibly. I get a bailout isn't ideal. It's coming out of our pockets one way or another anyways, but it's not sustainable. And so I think they need to be brought up to par, and waiting for amalgamation, Mike, is way too long. And you and I are still waiting for that Ken Sealing report. Why is that report being kept a secret? I don't want to talk about amalgamation being the be-all, end-all until I see that report, to at least have something as a basis to make a decision on that. So that's a couple of things for you today, Mike.
I appreciate it, Rory. Thank you. You know, I know Ken Sealing a little bit. Maybe I'll just make it my mission to wear him down and break that NDA, and he'll tell me what's in that report. He's been keeps it very close to the vest, understandably, because there was that NDA. Where is that report? I've made my mind up on amalgamation already. I don't give a tinker's darn what's in that report. I think it's long overdue. But Rory, clearly a far more sensible person than I am. I think it's a fair point to make when it comes to the provincial government doing more for municipalities. We've talked about it for quite some time in bigger jurisdictions like the city of Kitchener. We just had Mayor Verbanovic on last week. We do need a new fiscal arrangement. Yes, for sure. But I don't think that excuses entirely some of these historic blunders that townships have been making. I'll grant you, in Wilmot, it is an entirely new council this term. So brand new faces and ears and eyes across the board. Okay. In Woolwich, not necessarily the case. And I'm not trying to pick on anybody specifically, but in fairness, Mayor Shantz is in her third term. So she oversaw these previous budgets where they weren't putting aside enough. And that concerns me. It does. And we can't have our townships in this state. Simple as that. Rant or Rave continues. Paul, good afternoon.
Oh, hi there, Mike. I have a rant. It's about this HOV lanes. They build them, but they don't enforce them. I travel a lot to Toronto. I have a mother who's 90 years old, and it's frustrating to see people using the HOV lanes who shouldn't.
Paul, listen, I hear you, and I don't know what to tell you about that. I mean, it's the same old story, right? You live near a four-way stop, and people never stop. You live on a street where people drive too fast, but you can't get police to do speed enforcement. There's not nearly enough. I don't think police officers to enforce all of the things. I'm with you on the HOV lanes. The only answer I have is to don't sweat the small stuff, pal.
It's frustrating when you're sitting in traffic and you see them zoom by, and it's still okay. All right, that's it.
All right, Paul. No, listen, I hear you, and that is a perfect rant or rave kind of thing. Like, why can we not be better? We know what the HOV lane is for, right? The sign makes it very clear: 2 people or more. And I've used the HOV lanes before when I'm in the vehicle with my beloved, or we've taken trips to Toronto for Blue Jays games with good friends. So there are 4 of us, and you feel like, yeah, we're in the HOV lane because this is what it's designed for. And oh yeah, there are multiple people in the vehicle. Paul is absolutely right. I just don't know what to do about it other than ask for better neighbors. I'm talking to you, you bad neighbor, you. Clean off your car when it snows so that you can see and you're not a hazard to other vehicles on the road. And don't use the HOV lanes when you're driving by yourself, you jackwagon. Tony, you're on Rant or Rave. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mike. How are you?
Excellent. And you?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Good.
Actually, I have a rave today. Usually the other way, but I have a rave today.
Okay.
I was that guy that was thinking that those raised crosswalks there at Homer Watson by St. Mary's there, I thought, they're a waste of time. They're not going to do any good. It's just ridiculous. But I'll be honest with you, I go down that road numerous times a day, and they work. And they work well. And they work around the clock, just like those speed cameras do. So if anybody thinks that these measures don't work, they do work. And the only upside to it, the other upside to it is they're not gouging us at 3 o'clock in the morning with a speeding ticket. So kudos to the city for doing what they did, and it does work. So it works.
All right.
That's my rave.
Thank you, Tony. Appreciate it. The roundabout at Homer Watson and Block Line, one of 3 in the region that has had some changes made to it so that it enhances the safety for pedestrians. In the case of Homer Watson and Block Line by St. Mary's High School, it's the raised crosswalk. And Tony says they work. So there you go. It's a rave to the region for raising the crosswalks. Joe, you are next on Rant or Rave. Good afternoon.
Afternoon, Mike. I actually want to shout out to the great nurses and doctors at St. Mary's Hospital and the pre-op and the post-op day surgical unit. They were wonderful. I had to go for a procedure, and, anxiety leading up to a procedure for anybody is palpable. But I want to shout out to those people because they make you feel comfortable and safe, and, they take care of you. And thank you to all those wonderful doctors and nurses at St. Mary's. The whole experience was a bit of a nightmare because of the system, not the people. We got delayed by 3 hours, but I digress. Thank you to all you wonderful nurses and doctors at St. Mary's, and keep up the great work. Thanks, Mike.
All right, Joe. Thanks very much for that. We've said it many a time on this show before. When we have concern about the healthcare system, it's not the people working within it, it's the conditions in which they are forced to work. Time and again, we hear stories just like that. Not surprised to hear it again. And don't forget, of course, when talking about St. Mary's Hospital, it is Wren at Queens Boulevard is what you mean, right? St. Mary's Hospital is where I was born all these years ago. It was St. Mary's then. It's Wren at Queens Boulevard now. Just, because I'm particular that way. Rant or Rave continues here on the Mike Farwell Show this afternoon. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. I just learned something brand new about HOV lanes on our highways. If you drive a vehicle with a green license plate, i.e. an electric vehicle, or a motorcycle, you can use the HOV lane. I thought it was only for high occupancy vehicles, hence the name HOV lanes. I'm going to be using that sucker with my bike all the time next summer. Oh, I can't wait for summer. Stupid snow. 41 days. 41 days until winter. This is the nonsense we get. Rant or Rave continues here on the show, and I cannot resist the name on line 2 this afternoon. Hot Scott from Guelph. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Mike. Hey, do you remember the good old days, boss, when we used to get snow in October?
I try to forget them, Hot Scott.
Well, that's global warming that nobody believes in. Guelph Lake's half empty. We got a bridge going over to the lake. We don't even need a bridge anymore because there's nothing underneath it. Anyways, boss, this is my my hot take of the day.
Okay.
What is it with these grocery stores? The higher-end ones, okay? They're the biggest ones that we've got. I live right next to the store with the capital Z, Ayers, and it's really sad that every time I go in, and I haven't been working lately. I've been recovering from a couple surgeries. So for my exercise, I go to the mall, and then this is another thing I do. I go in there daily, get my food, look for a deal. There's no deals anymore, Mike. Everything's going up through the roof, man. I'm not going to be able to afford to wipe my bum soon.
Well, Scott, you could go to a different grocery store because I live close to one of those places too, and I've started going to your independent grocer instead. Saves me a few shekels,
That's what I'm doing now, Mike. I've decided I'm taking my business to No Frills and Food Basics, where the prices are kept reasonable.
There you go.
Like, for instance, sir, I went in to go buy a loaf of bread today, and this was the topper. I buy the fresh loaf that they bake. Costs a little more than the other one, but, a little nicer. It's regularly been about $2, $2.50. Today it was $3.30. I just walked out and said, you know what? You're nickel and diming everybody. You are the highest grossing grocery store in Canada, I bet, by far. And we're getting less and less Canadian produce in there and more other produce in there. Stuff that my family doesn't buy, stuff that immigrants would buy, but the immigrants don't go to the store, sir, because they don't afford it. You can walk through the store today and you won't see anybody in there, except for the Caucasian people.
Hang on a second. What are you doing here? What are you doing here? Settle down.
I'm hot, baby. I'm hot.
All right. You're hot, all right. And you're done. Listen, I'm with you on grocery store prices, okay? I get it. We can shop around. And I know they're still too high no matter where we go. But if you go to one store and you think, it's too high price there, try another store. Do some coupon clipping, etc. Ernie, rant or rave, good afternoon.
Hey, Mike, I got a few things. First thing is we're coming for you.
Settle down.
I say this as me and you both, we might as well have our helmets on, and we're part of the team already, I guess, eh?
Yes, we are. You are part of the purple team. I'm part of the black and gold team, yes.
Exactly. So that's the first thing. Second thing is took the kids to the ceremony here in town in New Dundee, and it was absolutely fantastic. It was it's really neat to walk down they shut the road down, and the pipers play, and they'll lead you up. And we have the ceremony, and I'm telling you, it's a challenge with 3 under 6. But you know what? They did great, and I want them to experience this every year. We're going to try to go every single year. And there was a lady who spoke about her experience of being liberated in Holland. She was 4 years old, and the story was just, it was like you got choked up, and hearing that and also just witnessing this and putting all the BS in the world aside for that time. Like, there's members of obviously all parties there, and the fact that we could all just be together, yet remember how, thank the Lord and thank God for that we have this freedom that we have because of these men that died. And so I just want to say that, it was really good. I wish you could, it's almost worth bringing her on the show to share that story, but obviously I know you'll probably have a good show on anyways with that day. And I just want to mention too, Mike, the fact that we can't wear poppies, and where they were banned at the one courtroom. Come on, Mike. Poppies you should be able to wear anywhere, anytime.
You can wear your poppy anywhere, anytime. Don't listen to that one courtroom.
I don't know. Are they allowed there?
Just wear it.
Just wear it.
Just wear it.
What? I'm okay with that, Mike. I like that. That's good.
Okay.
Mike, thanks.
Thanks, Ernie. I appreciate it. Yes, we are planning a Remembrance Day show for you tomorrow. Many stories to be shared throughout the day, including a local musician who has created a special Remembrance Day song with a little bit of support from a member of the Spoons. You got lots of stuff on the show tomorrow. Mary, good afternoon, rant or rave?
Oh, I guess it's a rant.
Okay.
Hi, Mike with a bike.
Hello.
Mary on the bike.
Hello, Mary on the bike.
Yeah, listen. You should get into soccer, darling. That's coming. You
what?
should start.
I don't want to watch soccer, Mary.
Yeah, but we're getting FIFA next year.
I don't care.
Yeah, but listen.
No. I don't want to.
No.
Okay.
Well, the hockey game was okay, but later on, and I spoke to my brother, and he said, "Oh, there's a soccer game in Ottawa, and we have a Premier League."
No, Mary, no.
Just listen.
No, you have to listen,
and
please.
It was snowing, and halftime they had to remove the snow.
Mary, I went to that alleged soccer game in Ottawa, the Atletico, back in the summertime. It was the worst sports experience I've ever had in my life.
No, but you should have seen them in the snow.
Well,
I'm
good.
telling you, they had to take. My God, they were warriors. Come on, Mike. You gotta I like the hockey, the baseball I watch. But listen, Mike, you gotta widen your whatever.
Okay. No, I won't. I tried it. I went to that very game in Ottawa. Yuck. It was awful. Grant, rant or rave?
Either or you decide. What exactly did Peter DeBoer say that there was very damaging? And I was
Peter DeBoer didn't say anything that was very damaging.
Oh, okay.
Okay. I'm glad I could help you out with that. You decide, Mike, if it's a rant or a rave. What did Peter DeBoer say that was very damaging? Nothing. That's your answer to that question. He is the first inductee into the Kitchener Rangers level of legacy because he didn't do anything damaging. You see, he turned the franchise around about 25 years ago. And just like that, we are out of time here for another day on the program. Tomorrow is Remembrance Day. We will celebrate and commemorate accordingly because that's the kind of people that we are. Thank you very much for being with me today. Looking forward to it tomorrow. I'll come back at 9 tomorrow morning, and I invite you to do the same. My name is Mike Farwell. You are a force for good. Bye for now.